tonight, we journey into the marketplace of consequences, where every choice we make ripples outward like stones thrown into still water. In the villages of ancient India, the Buddha walked among ordinary people facing ordinary struggles. Farmers and dyers, merchants and fishermen, brides and mothers, all learning the same eternal truth. What we give to the world returns to us, sometimes in ways we never expect. There is nothing you need to do tonight, nothing to fix, no one you need to become. Simply rest here and let these stories unfold like lotus petals opening at dawn. If this path of gentle wisdom calls to you, I invite you to subscribe and join our community of seekers who find peace in ancient teachings. The Buddha taught that our actions are like seeds. We plant them without thinking, scatter them carelessly through our days, and then wonder why our harvest brings bitter fruit. But every seed can teach us, every consequence can awaken us if we have eyes to see. Let us begin this journey together, exploring how the choices we make in small moments shape the world that embraces or rejects us. Take a gentle breath, feel your body supported by whatever holds you, and allow these teachings to settle into your heart like morning dew on thirsty earth. In a village known for its colorful markets, where silk scarves danced in the warm breeze and cotton cloth fluttered like prayer flags, there lived a dyer named Rajan. His shop stood at the corner of the main street, and from dawn until dusk, great vats of indigo, turmeric, and madder root bubbled and steamed, filling the air with the earthy scent of transformation. Rajan was gifted with color, the way some men are gifted with song. He could look at raw white cloth and envision it draped in sunset orange or deep forest green. His hands knew exactly how long to leave silk in the saffron bath, how much salt to add to set the crimson dye, how to coax the most brilliant blue from crushed indigo leaves. People came from neighboring villages to buy cloth, touched by Rajan's artistry. But the work was hard on his body, especially his hands. Every day he plunged them into caustic solutions that would eat through the roughest leather. The lime water he used to prepare cotton was so strong it could blind a man if splashed in his eyes. The iron-rich dyes blackened his fingernails and stained his palms in permanent patterns that no amount of scrubbing could remove. The acids and alkalis that created such beauty cracked his skin until deep fissures ran across his knuckles like dry riverbed in summer drought. By evening, when Rajan closed his shop, his hands throbbed with pain. The constant immersion had left them swollen and raw, marked with chemical burns that never quite healed before new ones appeared. His fingers had grown thick and clumsy, the nails yellowed and brittle, the skin mottled with permanent stains in shades of brown and purple and deep blue-black. He began wearing cloth wrappings over his hands when he walked through the market, claiming protection from the sun. When customers came to his shop, he kept his hands busy with work or hidden in the folds of his dhoti. At the evening meal, he ate quickly and quietly, his damaged hands tucked beneath the low table. His wife Mira watched this growing shame with worry. "Your hands are the tools of your art," she would say gently. "They bring beauty into the world." But Rajan would only shake his head. "Look at them," he whispered, unwrapping the cloth to reveal the cracked, discolored skin. "They are ugly, ruined. No one should have to see such things." The shame grew heavier each day. When children ran past his shop, laughing and playing, he pulled his hands back into the shadows. When his neighbors gathered in the evening courtyard to share stories and tea, he made excuses and stayed inside. The hands that created such magnificence had become, in his mind, objects of disgust. One afternoon, as the monsoon clouds gathered heavy and purple on the horizon, a traveling monk appeared at Rajan's shop. He was an old man, his saffron robes faded by sun and rain, his wooden bowl worn smooth by countless hands. His eyes were clear and kind, and when he spoke, his voice carried the gentleness of someone who had seen much suffering and learned not to add to it. "Brother," the monk said, "I have heard of your skill with color. They say you can make cloth sing like birds at dawn." Rajan kept his hands buried deep in a vat of indigo, stirring the precious silk without looking up. "I do what work I can," he replied quietly. The monk waited patiently, watching the careful way Rajan lifted the cloth, testing the depth of color, adjusting the temperature with practiced precision. Even with his hands hidden in the dark dye, his movements showed years of mastery. "The blue is perfect," the monk observed, "deep as evening sky, rich as the depths of the sacred lake at Pushkar. Your hands know their craft." At the mention of his hands, Rajan's shoulders tensed. He pulled the silk from the vat and hung it to drip, still keeping his stained fingers turned away. "I work as I can," he said again. The monk settled himself on a low stool near the vat, uninvited but welcome in the way of holy men everywhere. "I have traveled through many provinces," he said conversationally, "and I have seen the work of many dyers. Most produce cloth that fades in the first washing or runs its color onto everything around it. But here, in your village, the women wear saris that hold their brightness season after season. The men's turbans stay true to their deep jewel tones even under the harsh sun. This is rare skill." Rajan felt a flush of pride despite his discomfort. It was true. His dyes were permanent, his colors faithful. He had spent years perfecting the balance of minerals and heat, timing and technique that made the difference between craft and artistry. "May I see the hands that create such beauty?" the monk asked quietly. The question Rajan had been dreading, his stomach clenched with familiar shame. "My hands are not. They are damaged by the work. It would not be pleasant for you to see them." The monk was quiet for a long moment, watching a peacock butterfly settle on the rim of the turmeric vat, its wings reflecting gold in the afternoon light. "I have seen many hands in my travels," he said finally. "The hands of scribes, stained with ink and cramped from years of copying sacred texts. The hands of metal workers, scarred by sparks and rough with calluses. The hands of mothers, softened by rice water and marked by small cuts from preparing countless meals. Each pair tells the story of a life spent in service." Rajan continued his work, transferring a length of cotton from the lime bath to the clear water rinse. But his movements had grown stiff with tension. "What makes hands beautiful?" the monk asked, as if genuinely curious about the answer. "Softness," Rajan replied automatically. "Smooth skin, no marks or stains." He paused. "Clean nails, no scars." "Ah," the monk nodded thoughtfully. "So the hands of a baby are the most beautiful of all." "Well," Rajan hesitated. He had never thought of it quite that way. "Tell me," the monk continued, "have you ever seen the hands of the Buddha in the temple carvings?" Rajan nodded. Everyone knew those graceful hands, carved in stone and cast in bronze throughout the land. "What do you notice about them?" "They are perfect, smooth and unmarked." "Yes, and what work did those perfect hands accomplish?" The question hung in the warm, humid air. Rajan found himself considering it seriously. In all the stories, the Buddha's hands had been busy, teaching, healing, blessing, comforting the dying, lifting up the fallen. They had never been idle, never been purely decorative, but those are just carvings. Rajan said finally. The real Buddha was a man. His hands would have shown the marks of his life. Exactly so. The monk's voice was gentle. The real Buddha walked dusty roads until his feet cracked. He begged for food until his bowl was worn smooth. He touched lepers when no one else would come near. Do you think his hands remained unmarked by such work? Rajan had stopped working entirely now, standing motionless beside his vat with his hands still hidden. I would like to see the hands that have brought so much beauty into this world, the monk said again. Not because I enjoy looking at damaged skin, but because I honor the sacrifice that creates something meaningful. Slowly, reluctantly, Rajan lifted his hands from the dark water. In the afternoon light, they looked even worse than usual, swollen and cracked, stained in patterns of blue and brown and yellow that no amount of washing could remove. Some of the cracks had reopened and showed raw pink flesh beneath. His nails were thick and discolored, his knuckles enlarged from constant swelling. The monk looked at them carefully, without flinching or turning away. He studied the intricate patterns of stain and scar, the way another man might examine a piece of fine artwork. These hands have clothed the entire village in color, he said finally. Every woman who wears a sari that catches the light like jewels, every child dressed in cloth that stays bright through play and washing, every festival where the people shine like flowers in a garden. All of this beauty exists because these hands were willing to be damaged. Rajan stared down at his ruined fingers, seeing them as if for the first time. Your hands are beautiful, the monk continued, not despite what they have endured, but because of what they have given. They tell the story of a man who found his gift and used it fully, regardless of the cost to himself. How could such hands be anything but beautiful? The late afternoon sun slanted through the shop, casting long shadows across the floor. Somewhere in the distance, temple bells began to ring, calling the faithful to evening prayers. The air was thick with the scent of coming rain and the earthly perfume of dyes and wet cloth. Rajan turned his hands slowly in the golden light, watching the patterns of stain shift and change. For the first time in years, he really looked at them, not with shame, but with curiosity. The blue stains mapped exactly where he gripped the cloth as he lifted it from the indigo vat. The yellow marks on his thumbs showed where he tested the turmeric concentration day after day. The deep brown crescents under his nails told of countless mornings spent grinding madder root into fine powder. Every mark has meaning, the monk observed quietly. Every scar has purpose. These are not random damages. They are the precise record of skilled labor, repeated perfectly over thousands of days. Let us rest here for a moment, feeling the truth of this teaching settle into our awareness. Notice your own breath, gentle and natural. Feel your body supported, held safely as you listen. There is nothing you need to understand with your mind. Let the wisdom enter through your heart instead. As the first drops of monsoon rain began to patter on the shop's tin roof, Rajan continued to study his hands with new eyes. The monk sat in comfortable silence, allowing the moment to deepen without pushing for more words or faster understanding. I have been ashamed, Rajan said finally. Shame is natural when we see only the surface, the monk replied. But you are a dyer. You know that true color comes from what goes deep, not what shows on the surface. Your hands show their true color now, the color of devotion, of skill, willingly sacrificed for beauty. The rain was falling steadier now, drumming on the roof and raising the sweet scent of wet earth. In the neighboring shops, Merchants were covering their wares and preparing to close for the evening. But in the dye shop, master and monk sat quietly together, watching water drip from the eaves into clay pots set out to catch it. "There is a story about a master potter," the monk said, settling back against the wall as if preparing for a longer conversation. "Would you like to hear it?" Rajan nodded, still turning his stained hands slowly in the fading light. This potter was famous throughout the kingdom for his vessels, bowls that held water without a drop of seepage, pots that cooked rice to perfect tenderness, jars that kept grain fresh through the longest droughts. Kings and merchants traveled great distances to buy his work. The monk paused to listen to the rain, now falling in earnest sheets that turned the dusty street into flowing streams. But the potter's hands, like yours, showed the cost of his mastery. They were rough as tree bark from handling clay day after day. His fingertips were worn flat from countless hours at the wheel. Clay dust had worked so deep into his skin that his palms were permanently gray. When he worked, his hands looked like they were made of the same earth as his pots. A peacock called from somewhere in the rain, its cry wild and haunting. In the distance, a woman began to sing as she drew water from her well, her voice mixing with the sound of falling water. "The potter's son was ashamed of his father's rough hands," the monk continued. "When nobles came to buy pots, the son would try to handle the transactions himself, keeping his father in the back room. 'Your hands are too ugly,' he told his father. 'They will think less of your work if they see what made it.'" Rajan shifted uncomfortably. The story felt uncomfortably close to his own situation. One day, a great Raja came to commission a special set of vessels for his daughter's wedding. He wanted to meet the famous potter himself, to see the hands that created such perfection. The son tried to refuse, but the Raja insisted. The monk reached into his bowl and pulled out a piece of cloth, rough homespun, but dyed in the most extraordinary shade of deep blue Rajan had ever seen. Even in the dim light of the rainy evening, the color seemed to glow with inner fire. The potter showed his hands to the Raja, gray with clay and rough as stone. The Raja examined them carefully, turning them this way and that in the light. "Perfect," he said finally. "These are exactly the hands I would expect from a master. Any man can keep his hands soft by avoiding difficult work. Only a true craftsman bears the marks of his devotion." Rajan reached out to touch the blue cloth, his stained fingers tracing its smooth surface. "This color," he whispered. "I have never seen indigo hold such depth. It was dyed by a master in the northern mountains," the monk said. "A woman whose hands were so damaged by the harsh chemicals that she could barely hold a cup to drink. But she understood, as you are beginning to understand, that hands marked by honest labor carry their own dignity." The rain was lessening now, settling into the steady rhythm that would continue through the night. In the growing darkness, Rajan lit an oil lamp, its flame casting dancing shadows on the walls, lined with hanging cloth in every color imaginable. "What happened to the potter's son?" Rajan asked. "He learned what you are learning tonight. That skill and devotion leave their own kind of beauty, one that goes deeper than unmarked skin." He began to see his father's hands not as objects of shame, but as proof of mastery earned through sacrifice. The monk folded the blue cloth carefully and returned it to his bowl. "The Buddha taught that we honor what we love by giving ourselves fully to it. Your hands have been given fully to the art of color. How could they be anything but honorable?" Outside, the rain had settled into a gentle, steady fall that would soak deep into the earth and nourish the plants from which tomorrow's dyes would come. The madder roots would drink deep, storing up the compounds that would create the richest reds. The indigo leaves would grow thick and potent, ready to yield their precious blue. Even the rain was part of the great cycle that brought beauty into the world. Rajan looked around his shop, at the lengths of silk hanging like captured rainbows, at the cotton cloth drying in shades from palest yellow to deepest purple, at the careful arrangement of pots and vats and tools that were the instruments of his art. All of it existed because his hands had been willing to be marked, stained, and damaged in service of something larger than comfort. "I think," he said quietly, "I have been seeing only the pain and not the purpose." The monk nodded. Pain without purpose is meaningless suffering, but pain accepted in service of beauty, in devotion to one's gift, in love of the work itself, this pain becomes sacred. Your hands are sacred, brother. They have been consecrated by service. As if to test this new understanding, Rajan slowly unwrapped the cloth he had worn around his hands for months. In the lamplight, the stains and scars seemed less like disfigurement and more like what? Like a map of dedication, like proof of purpose, like the visible record of a life spent in meaningful work. "Tomorrow," he said, "when I work, I will not hide my hands." "And when you work," the monk replied, "remember that every mark they bear is a mark of honor. You are not just a dyer of cloth, Rajan. You are a keeper of beauty, a servant of color, a man who has given his very flesh to bring joy into the world." The lamp flickered as a cool breeze stirred through the shop, carrying the fresh scent of rain-washed earth and the lingering fragrance of dyes. Outside, the village was settling into the peaceful rhythm of evening, mothers calling children home, the soft lowing of cattle being brought in from pasture, the distant sound of temple drums marking the day's end. But here in the dye shop, as master and monk sat together in comfortable silence, something had shifted as permanently as indigo setting deep into cotton fiber. The hands that had been hidden in shame for so long rested openly in the lamplight, no longer objects of disgust, but tools of artistry, marked by devotion and beautiful in their sacrifice. This story shows us how shame can blind us to our own sacred purpose. Rajan discovered that his damaged hands were not marks of failure, but evidence of devotion, each stain and scar a testament to beauty created through willing sacrifice. Buddhism teaches that we often suffer most from our resistance to what is already true. When we stop hiding from the marks that honest work leaves on our lives, we begin to see them as they really are, proof of service, signs of love made visible. The rain continued through the night, drumming gently on rooftops and filling the air with the green scent of growing things. And in the dye shop, where cloth hung like captured pieces of sky and sunset, a man learned to see his hands, truly see them, for the first time in years. Let us pause here and take a gentle breath. Feel the air moving naturally in and out of your body. Notice how your own hands rest, whether folded or open, supporting you without effort. There is nothing you need to change about yourself in this moment. Simply rest and allow these teachings to work their quiet transformation. In a village 3 days' walk from where Rajan practiced his craft, there lived a woman named Kamala who kept bees. Her house sat at the edge of the forest, where wildflowers bloomed in great drifts, jasmine and marigold, lotus and frangipani, creating a paradise of color and fragrance that drew bees from miles around. Behind her home, dozens of clay hives hummed with the constant, peaceful drone of thousands of wings. Kamala had learned beekeeping from her grandmother, who had learned it from her grandmother before her. The knowledge passed down through generations of women who understood the secret language of bees, who knew which flowers produced the clearest honey, who could read the weather in the way the bees returned to their hives. Every morning before dawn, Kamala would walk among her hives, listening to their different voices. A healthy hive sang with steady contentment. A troubled hive grew agitated and sharp. A queenless hive fell into confused silence. Her ears, trained by years of careful attention, could diagnose problems that would be invisible to others until too late. The work was delicate and dangerous. Bees defended their honey with their lives, and even the gentlest keeper sometimes faced their wrath. Kamala had been stung thousands of times over the years. Most stings she barely noticed anymore, tiny pinpricks that swelled briefly and faded. But some stings, especially those near her eyes or on her throat, could swell dramatically, making her face unrecognizable for days. The constant exposure to bee venom had changed her body in ways both subtle and profound. Her hands, arms, and face bore the permanent marks of her trade. Small scars where particularly deep stings had left their mark, areas of skin that had grown thick and numb from repeated exposure, patches that had developed an unusual texture from the body's attempts to defend itself against the foreign protein. But worse than the physical marks was something else, a strange sensitivity that had developed over time. The same bee venom that most people's bodies learned to tolerate had begun to affect Kamala differently. What started as normal swelling from stings began to spread further and last longer. Her throat would constrict for hours after even a minor sting. Her breathing would grow shallow and labored. Her heart would race with inexplicable panic. The village healer, an elderly woman named Devi, who knew every remedy that could be coaxed from root and leaf, examined Kamala with growing concern. "Your body is at war with itself," she said finally. "The bee venom that once caused only brief discomfort now creates a storm that spreads through your entire being." "But I cannot stop keeping bees," Kamala protested. "It is my livelihood, my inheritance, my calling. What else would I do?" Devi had no answer. There were few other trades that a woman alone could practice successfully, and none that Kamala had the knowledge or resources to begin. The bees were her life. So Kamala continued her work, but now with growing fear. Each morning when she approached the hives, she wondered if today would bring the sting that finally overwhelmed her body's defenses entirely. She began to work more cautiously, wearing heavier veils, moving more slowly, avoiding the hives on days when the bees seemed particularly agitated. But caution alone could not solve the deeper problem. The very air around her hives was thick with the microscopic particles of venom that busy bees released as they worked. Even without being stung, Kamala found herself growing short of breath during the honey harvest, her throat tightening from mere proximity to her own livelihood. The fear grew stronger with each passing season. She would wake in the night, heart pounding, dreaming of swarms covering her face, of her throat closing completely, of dying alone among the hives that had been her companions for so long. During the day, she found herself hesitating before simple tasks that she had once performed without thought, opening a hive to check for disease, harvesting honeycomb heavy with golden treasure, even walking too close to the entrance where guard bees stood watchful duty. Her honey production began to decline. Hives that should have been inspected regularly went unchecked until problems became crises. Swarms that could have been captured and housed were lost because she arrived too late, afraid to approach, until she was certain they had settled peacefully. The careful, attentive relationship between keeper and bees began to deteriorate into one of mutual wariness. The financial strain was immediate and severe. Honey was her only source of income, and buyers could tell the difference between honey from well-tended hives and honey from neglected ones. The clear, golden sweetness that had once commanded the highest prices grew cloudy and thin. The complex floral notes that came from bees allowed to forage freely from diverse flowers gave way to simpler, harsher flavors as stressed hives focused on survival rather than the luxury of selectivity. Kamala began to ration her food, selling ever smaller quantities of increasingly inferior honey to cover her most basic needs. She stopped buying oil for her lamps, working by moonlight when she could and going to bed when darkness fell. She patched her clothes until they were more patch than original fabric and let her roof leak rather than spend money on repairs that might be needed to buy rice instead. But even as her external circumstances grew more desperate, it was the internal torment that wore at her most severely. She had defined herself as a beekeeper for so long that she no longer knew who she was when separated from her calling. The confident woman who had once moved fearlessly among thousands of stinging insects was being replaced by someone timid and uncertain, afraid of her own livelihood. On the morning when everything changed, Kamala woke to unusual silence. The familiar dawn chorus of humming hives was missing, replaced by an ominous quiet that made her heart race before she was fully conscious. She dressed quickly and hurried outside to find several of her hives completely still. Not the peaceful stillness of bees at rest, but the terrible stillness of death. Disease had struck in the night. The bodies of bees covered the ground in front of 3 hives like a carpet of tiny golden corpses. The few survivors crawled weakly among their dead sisters, their wings too damaged to carry them back to safety. Without immediate intervention, she would lose not just these 3 colonies, but likely several more as the disease spread through her carefully tended community. Kamala stood at the edge of the devastation, paralyzed by conflicting needs. To save her remaining bees, she would need to remove the dead and dying, clean the infected hives, and transfer healthy bees to new homes. All tasks that would require direct contact with agitated, defensive insects. But her body's growing sensitivity meant that even a few stings could trigger the breathing difficulties that now terrified her more than financial ruin. She thought of her grandmother, who had worked these same hives until the day she died, her hands steady and confident even in her 70th year. She thought of the generations of women who had passed down this knowledge, trusting her to carry it forward. She thought of the healthy hives that still hummed with life, dependent on her care for their survival. But she also thought of Devi's warnings about her body's rebellion against the venom that had once been as familiar as her own blood. She thought of the dreams that woke her gasping for air. She thought of dying alone among the creatures she loved, killed by the very thing that had given her life meaning. As she stood frozen by indecision, a voice spoke behind her. "The bees are in trouble." Kamala turned to find an old woman she had never seen before, ancient, with skin weathered by decades of sun and work, wearing the simple robes of a wandering nun. Her eyes were clear and kind, and she looked at the scene of devastation without flinching. "Yes," Kamala said simply. "Disease struck in the night. I need to—" She gestured helplessly toward the hives, unable to finish the sentence. "But you are afraid," the nun observed without judgment. Kamala nodded, ashamed of her fear but unable to deny it. "The bee venom. My body has begun to rebel against it. What once caused only brief pain now threatens my breathing, my heart. I fear that trying to save them might kill you." The nun finished gently. "Yes." The old woman walked slowly to the edge of the bee yard, studying the dead and dying insects with the attention of someone who had seen much death and learned not to waste it. "What is your name, child?" "Kamala." "Kamala, a beautiful name. It means lotus, does it not? The flower that grows most beautifully in muddy water." The nun smiled. "I am called Tara. I have walked many roads and seen many kinds of suffering. May I ask you something?" Kamala nodded, grateful for any conversation that might delay the terrible decision she faced. "These bees," Tara said, gesturing toward the silent hives. "Do they know that their stings might harm you?" The question surprised Kamala. "No, of course not. They sting to defend their home, their honey, their young. It is their nature." "And when they sting you, do they do so from malice? From hatred?" "No. They act from love, really. Love of their community, their queen, their purpose." Tara nodded slowly. "And when your body reacts to their venom, growing swollen and making it hard to breathe, is your body acting from hatred of the bees?" Kamala considered this. "No. My body is trying to protect itself. It sees the venom as a threat and responds with fear, I suppose. So we have bees acting from love, trying to protect what they cherish. And we have your body acting from love, trying to protect what it cherishes. And we have you, caught between two forms of love that seem to be in conflict." Tara's voice was infinitely patient, as if she had all the time in the world to explore this question. "Tell me, where is the real enemy in this situation?" The question hung in the morning air like incense, heavy and impossible to ignore. Kamala found herself thinking deeply, perhaps for the first time, about the nature of her dilemma. The bees were not her enemies. They were her partners, her teachers, her life's work. Her body was not her enemy. It was trying to keep her alive, responding to what it perceived as mortal danger. "There is no enemy," she said slowly. "Then what is there?" Kamala looked again at the devastation before her, but now with different eyes. The dead bees were not victims of some malevolent force, but casualties of the natural cycles that governed all life. Her body's reaction was not a betrayal, but evidence of its fierce dedication to her survival. Even her fear was not weakness, but intelligence, the recognition of real danger that deserved respect, not shame. "There is only the situation as it is," she said finally. "Yes, and what does the situation require?" The answer was obvious, though not simple. The bees need care, the healthy hives need protection, the sick ones need treatment or removal to prevent spreading disease. "And what do you need?" This was harder. Kamala's first impulse was to say she needed safety, protection from the venom that her body could no longer tolerate. But as she spoke with Tara, she began to understand that her deepest need was not safety, but wholeness, the restoration of the relationship between herself and her calling that fear had damaged. "I need to find a way to care for them without being destroyed by caring for them." Tara smiled, the expression transforming her weathered face into something radiant. "Now we are approaching wisdom, not the false wisdom that pretends there are simple solutions to complex problems, but the true wisdom that asks how to serve what we love, even when that service requires great skill and courage." The sun was rising higher now, and the surviving bees were beginning to stir in the healthy hives. Soon they would emerge to begin their daily work, and if they found their path blocked by disease and death, they might abandon their homes entirely, seeking safer territory where they could rebuild their community. "What would you do?" Kamala asked. "Kamala, I would remember that courage is not the absence of fear, but right action in the presence of fear, Tara replied. I would ask what tools and knowledge I possessed that might allow me to serve these creatures while honoring my body's wisdom about danger. Kamala thought of her grandmother's teachings, passed down through generations of women who had faced their own challenges with bees. She thought of the heavy veils and thick gloves that provided protection without eliminating all risk. She thought of the smoke that calmed aggressive bees, the timing that allowed work during the peaceful hours when most bees were away foraging. But more than that, she thought of something her grandmother had told her years ago. The bees can sense your fear, child. When you approach them with panic in your heart, they become panicked too. When you come with calm purpose, they recognize a friend. My fear has been making them more dangerous, she realized aloud. Fear often creates what it seeks to avoid, Tara agreed. But understanding fear, working skillfully with fear, can transform it from an obstacle into a teacher. As if to demonstrate the truth of this teaching, one of the surviving bees from the diseased hive landed on Kamala's arm. In her old life, before the fear had taken hold, she would have observed it calmly, noting its condition, perhaps even gently guiding it back toward safety. In her recent life of anxiety and avoidance, she would have panicked, swatted at it, triggered exactly the defensive response she feared. But now, in this moment of conversation with Tara, she found herself simply watching the bee with curiosity rather than terror. It was clearly sick. Its movements were sluggish, its wings damaged, but it showed no aggression, no inclination to sting. It was simply a fellow creature struggling to survive, doing its best with whatever strength remained. "Hello, sister," Kamala whispered, and the bee cleaned its antennae with its front legs in what looked almost like a greeting. "You see," Tara said softly, "when you meet them with respect rather than fear, they respond to that respect. This does not mean there is no danger. There is real danger, and your body is wise to recognize it. But danger met with skill and calmness is different from danger met with panic and avoidance." The bee finished its grooming and flew weakly back toward its damaged hive, leaving Kamala strangely moved by the encounter. Such a small thing, allowing a sick bee to rest on her arm, but it felt like the first step back toward the relationship with her calling that she had thought was lost forever. "I think," she said slowly, "I have been trying to choose between my safety and my purpose, as if they could never coexist. And now I think maybe the choice is between serving my purpose skillfully or serving it carelessly, between honoring both my calling and my body's wisdom, or pretending that only one of them matters." Tara nodded approvingly. The middle way, not the extreme of reckless endangerment, and not the extreme of complete avoidance, but the path that honors all the truths of the situation. As they spoke, more bees began to emerge from the healthy hives, starting their daily work of gathering nectar and pollen from the forest flowers. Their humming filled the air with purposeful music, a reminder of the life that continued even in the presence of death, the work that carried on even in the face of loss. "Will you help me?" Kamala asked suddenly. "I have protective gear and smoke to calm them, and I know what needs to be done. But I think having a witness, someone to help me stay calm and centered, might make the difference between acting from fear and acting from wisdom." "I would be honored," Tara replied. "Though I know nothing of bees, I know something of fear, and something of the courage that transforms fear into compassionate action." Together, they walked toward Kamala's house to gather the tools and protective clothing that would allow her to serve her bees without unnecessarily endangering herself. As they walked, Kamala felt something shifting inside her chest. Not the tight constriction of anxiety, but a loosening, an opening, a return of breath to spaces that had been compressed by fear for too long. The work would still be dangerous. Her body would still react strongly to any venom that penetrated her defenses. The fundamental challenge of serving what she loved while honoring her body's limitations had not disappeared, but the paralyzing opposition between safety and purpose had begun to dissolve, replaced by something more complex but more workable. The recognition that true safety lay not in avoiding all danger, but in meeting necessary dangers with skill, preparation, and calm courage. My grandmother used to say that the bees teach us about community, Kamala said as they reached her door. How individual sacrifice serves the greater good, how each member has a role to play, how the health of the whole depends on each part doing its work with dedication. Wise words, Tara agreed, and perhaps today they will teach us something else, how to serve the community we love even when that service requires us to transform our relationship with fear itself. As they gathered the thick canvas suit, the leather gloves reinforced with layers of cloth, and the metal smoker that would burn dried grass to calm the bees, Kamala felt her grandmother's presence strongly. These same tools had protected generations of women in her family, and each piece bore the marks of faithful service, scorch marks on the smoker from countless fires, patches sewn carefully onto the protective suit, gloves worn soft and supple by decades of use. She taught me to move slowly among them, Kamala said, pulling on the heavy suit with movements made automatic by years of practice. Never sudden gestures, never hurried breathing. Bees can sense the rhythm of your heart, she said, and they grow calm when they feel calmness in you. Tara watched the careful preparations with interest. Your grandmother sounds like she understood that the bees were not separate from herself, but part of a larger community that included her own breath, her own heartbeat. Yes, she would say that good beekeeping was not about controlling the bees, but about joining their work, becoming part of their pattern. Kamala lit the smoker, waiting for the grass to catch properly before closing the bellows. I think I had forgotten that. Fear made me see them as dangerous strangers instead of family. The walk back to the bee yard felt different now, charged with purpose rather than dread. The protective clothing that had once felt like armor against an enemy now felt like the proper attire for sacred work. The smoker's gentle puffs of white smoke rose into the morning air like incense, preparing the space for healing. At the first diseased hive, Kamala paused to center herself, breathing deeply within the confines of her veil. Through the mesh, she could see the carnage more clearly. Hundreds of bees dead on the ground, their bodies forming a dark carpet around the hive entrance. The few survivors moved weakly among them, some still trying futilely to drag the dead away from their home. What do you see when you look at this? Tara asked quietly. Kamala looked again, forcing herself past the immediate impression of devastation to observe more carefully. The pattern of death tells a story, she said slowly, her grandmother's training reasserting itself. See how the bodies are concentrated here, near the entrance? This suggests the disease struck quickly, overwhelming their ability to remove the sick before they died. But look, there, at the edges, some bees are still moving. The colony is not entirely lost. She approached the hive slowly, sending gentle puffs of smoke toward the entrance to announce her presence and calm any defensive responses. The surviving bees barely reacted. They were too weakened by disease, and too focused on the crisis to spare energy for aggression. Working with careful efficiency, Kamala began to remove the dead, her gloved hands gentle as she gathered each small body. Even through the thick leather, she could feel their lightness. The way death had somehow diminished their substance until they seemed made of nothing but chitin and memory. As she worked, something unexpected happened. The familiar rhythm of the work, the careful attention to each detail, the ancient pattern of caring for creatures who depended on her knowledge, all of it combined to create a kind of meditation that pushed fear to the edges of her awareness. Not gone, but transformed from panic into respectful caution. "I had forgotten how much I loved this work," she murmured, lifting a section of honeycomb to examine it for signs of infection. Not just the honey or the income, but the work itself. The privilege of caring for something so complex and beautiful. The healthy comb was perfect, hexagons so precisely constructed that mathematicians traveled great distances to study them, filled with honey that caught the morning light like liquid amber. Even in the diseased hive, most of the comb remained unaffected, a testament to the bee's incredible ability to compartmentalize problems and protect what could still be saved. "This can be harvested," she told Tara, pointing to a section of sealed honey far from where the disease had taken hold. "And this brood comb here. See how the cells are capped and healthy? Those young bees will emerge in a few days, and they can be combined with another colony to strengthen it." As she spoke, Kamala realized that her breathing had settled into its old, familiar pattern, deep and slow, perfectly synchronized with the rhythm of her work. Her heart had stopped racing. The tight feeling in her chest had eased. For the first time in months, she felt truly present in her own life. "Fear had made me forget my own competence," she said, carefully transferring healthy broodcomb to an empty box. "I started seeing only the danger and forgetting all the knowledge I had for working safely with that danger." "This happens often," Tara observed, settling onto a wooden stool at the edge of the bee yard where she could watch without interfering. "When fear grows large enough, it can eclipse even our greatest skills, making us feel helpless in situations where we actually have great power." The work continued through the morning, cleaning, sorting, combining weak colonies with strong ones, removing diseased material, and setting up the survivors in clean hives with fresh comb. It was delicate work that required constant attention and frequent small decisions, each one based on careful observation of bee behavior, comb condition, and the subtle signs that indicated health or disease. By midday, the crisis was contained. 3 colonies had been lost entirely, but their healthy resources had been distributed among the surviving hives, actually strengthening the overall population. The bee yard hummed with renewed purpose as the relocated colonies began the work of making themselves at home in their new quarters. Kamala pulled off her veil and gloves, her face flushed with exertion, but radiant with satisfaction. "I had one small sting," she reported to Tara, showing a red mark on her wrist where the protective suit had gaped slightly. "Right here, when I was transferring the queen from the second hive. But I was so focused on her safety. She's so delicate and everything depends on her that I barely noticed." "And how do you feel now?" Tara asked. Kamala considered the question seriously, checking her body for the signs that had terrified her for so long. There was some swelling around the sting site and a familiar burning sensation, but her breathing remained clear, her heart steady. More importantly, the sting felt like what it had always been before fear transformed it. A small occupational hazard, the price of working intimately with creatures who defended themselves the only way they knew how. "I feel myself again," she said wonderingly. Not unafraid. I can still feel the wariness, the respect for their power to harm me. But the fear is no longer bigger than everything else I know about this work. They sat together in the shade of a neem tree, sharing water from Kamala's well and watching the bees settle into their reorganized world. The surviving colonies were already sending out scouts to assess their new neighborhoods, while foragers returned with pollen and nectar to begin rebuilding their stores. There is another story, Tara said, about a woman who kept silkworms. Kamala settled back against the tree trunk, grateful for any teaching that might help her understand what had happened this morning. This woman had inherited her silk farm from her mother, as you inherited your bees from your grandmother. She raised the finest silkworms in the province, fat, healthy caterpillars that spun cocoons of the purest white silk. Merchants came from the capital city to buy her thread, paying prices that allowed her to live comfortably and support her family. A peacock butterfly landed on the rim of Kamala's water jar, its wings iridescent in the dappled sunlight. Neither woman moved, allowing it to drink in peace. But silk farming is dangerous work in ways that few people understand. The same chemicals used to kill the pupae inside the cocoons, the boiling water that softens the silk for reeling. These processes fill the air with particles that can damage the lungs over time. The woman began to develop a terrible cough that grew worse each season. Kamala nodded, understanding the parallel immediately. Every occupation had its hazards, its ways of marking those who practiced it with the signs of their devotion. The local healer told her the same thing your healer told you, that her body was rebelling against the very work that sustained her life. That continuing might eventually damage her lungs beyond repair. The butterfly finished drinking and flew away, a flash of blue and gold disappearing into the forest canopy. In the bee yard, the afternoon foragers were returning heavy with pollen, their legs bright yellow with the dust of marigold and sunflower. Like you, she faced an impossible choice: stop the work that gave her life meaning, or continue and risk destroying the body that made the work possible. She tried various compromises, wearing cloth over her nose and mouth, opening windows to clear the air, working shorter days to reduce her exposure. But the cough continued to worsen. Tara paused to sip water, letting the parallel story settle into Kamala's awareness before continuing. Finally, in desperation, she went to seek advice from an old master weaver who lived in the mountains. This woman had worked with silk for 70 years, yet her breathing was clear and strong despite her great age. What was her secret? Kamala asked. The old weaver listened to the story with great attention, then asked to see exactly how the silk farmer did her work. She watched every step, from feeding the worms to harvesting cocoons, to boiling and reeling the silk into thread. A cloud passed over the sun, casting the bee yard into gentle shadow and bringing a brief coolness to the afternoon heat. The bees' humming grew slightly louder, a sign that they were working harder to maintain their hive temperature in the changing conditions. Your technique is perfect, the old weaver said finally. Your worms are healthy. Your cocoons are beautiful. Your silk is the finest quality. But you are fighting your work instead of dancing with it. Fighting it? How? The old weaver pointed out something the silk farmer had never noticed. Every time she approached the boiling vats, her breathing became shallow and rapid, not from the chemicals in the air, but from anxiety about the chemicals in the air. She held her breath when she should have been breathing slowly and deeply. She tensed her chest when she should have kept it open and relaxed. Kamala felt a shock of recognition. The fear was making the danger worse. Exactly. The old weaver taught her to breathe properly while working. long, slow breaths that kept her lungs clear and strong, that actually helped her body process and eliminate the irritants instead of trapping them in tense, closed spaces. This teaching landed in Kamala's awareness with the force of complete truth. She thought of her morning's work, how her breathing had naturally settled into the deep, rhythmic pattern she had learned from her grandmother, how the one sting she had received had seemed manageable precisely because she had been breathing calmly when it happened, allowing her body to respond with balance rather than panic. But there was more, Tara continued. The old weaver also taught her to work in harmony with the natural rhythms of the process instead of fighting against them, to use the steam from the vats to open her breathing passages instead of seeing it only as a threat, to time her exposure carefully, taking breaks not from fear, but from wisdom. A group of children ran past on the road beyond Kamala's fence, their voices bright with laughter as they chased each other toward the village. Their sound reminded her of her own childhood, when she had played among these same hives without any thought of danger, protected by her grandmother's knowledge and calm presence. The silk farmer's cough disappeared within a single season, Tara concluded, not because the work became less dangerous, but because she learned to meet that danger with skill instead of fear, with breath instead of tension, with wisdom instead of resistance. They sat in comfortable silence as the teaching settled into understanding. Around them, the reorganized bee colonies continued their work with the focused intensity that had made them teachers to humans for thousands of years. Each bee knew its role, performed its work with dedication, and trusted the larger pattern that connected individual effort to collective survival. I think I understand now why my grandmother was never afraid of the bees, Kamala said finally. It wasn't because she never got stung, or because her body didn't react to the venom. It was because she had learned to work with all of it. The bees, the stings, her body's responses, her own breathing, as parts of a single complex dance. Yes, and what happens when a dancer fights against the music? Kamala smiled. She falls out of rhythm. She stumbles. She makes the dance awkward and dangerous instead of graceful and flowing. But when she moves with the music, even difficult steps become possible. Even dangerous moves can be performed safely because she's working with the forces involved instead of against them. The late afternoon light was beginning to slant through the trees, casting long shadows across the bee yard. Soon, it would be time for the evening inspection, checking each hive to make sure the relocated colonies were settling in well, that the queens were safe, that the day's crisis had been truly resolved. But first, Kamala found herself looking at her own hands, the hands that had worked among thousands of stinging insects without major incident, that had transferred delicate queens and fragile comb with skill born of years of practice, that had remained steady and competent even in the presence of genuine danger. For months, I saw only weakness in these hands, she said, flexing her fingers in the golden light. The way they sometimes trembled when I approached the hives, the way they had grown clumsy from lack of practice, the way they seemed to have forgotten their own knowledge. And now I see that they never forgot anything. The knowledge was always there, waiting underneath the fear. They just needed permission to remember what they knew. Tara nodded approvingly. Fear is like a thick cloud that makes us forget the sun still shines behind it, but the sun never actually goes away. As if summoned by her words, the sun broke through the cloud cover completely, flooding the bee yard with rich, honey-colored light that made every surface glow. The bees' wings caught the light as they flew, creating tiny prisms that scattered rainbow fragments through the air. The flowering vines that covered Kamala's fence blazed with color, jasmine white as pearls, bougainvillea purple as amethyst, marigold orange as flame. "It's beautiful," Kamala breathed, seeing her world with fresh eyes after the morning's transformation. "How did I let fear make me blind to so much beauty?" "Fear narrows our vision," Tara explained gently. "When we see only the danger, we miss the context that makes the danger manageable. We forget our own strength, our own knowledge, our own capacity to meet challenges with wisdom." The evening inspection went smoothly, each relocated colony showing signs of successful integration with their new homes. Queens were laying eggs, workers were building comb, foragers were returning with full pollen baskets. The crisis that had threatened to destroy everything had instead become an opportunity for renewal, for stronger colonies and better organization. As they walked back toward the house in the gathering dusk, Kamala felt something she hadn't experienced in months: excitement about tomorrow's work. Not the dread that had characterized her recent relationship with her calling, but eager anticipation of the daily round of tasks that connected her to the ancient rhythm of seasons and flowers and the patient industry of bees. "I have been thinking," she said as they reached her door, "about what you said earlier, about courage being right action in the presence of fear rather than the absence of fear." "Yes, I think I had been waiting for the fear to go away completely before I could work properly again. But that's not how it works, is it? The fear of bee stings may always be with me now, because it's based on real knowledge about how my body responds. But I can learn to work skillfully with that fear, to let it inform my caution without paralyzing my ability to act." Tara smiled in the deepening twilight. "You have learned something very precious today. Most people spend their entire lives trying to eliminate fear, not understanding that fear often contains important information. The wisdom is not in becoming fearless, but in learning to listen to fear without being controlled by it." The oil lamp in Kamala's window flickered to life as a neighbor passed by on the evening road, calling out a friendly greeting. The ordinary sounds of village life, children being called home for dinner, cattle lowing as they were brought in from pasture, the distant sound of temple bells, reminded Kamala that her personal crisis had been resolved within the context of a world that had continued its ancient patterns, patient and enduring. "Will you stay for the evening meal?" she asked Tara. "It's simple food, but I have honey fresh from this morning's harvest and bread that I baked yesterday when I thought—" She paused, remembering the despair of the previous morning. "When I thought I might never be able to work among the bees again." "I would be honored," Tara replied. "And perhaps while we eat, you can tell me more about what your grandmother taught you. I sense there are other wisdoms she passed down that might be worth remembering." As they prepared the simple meal together, Kamala found herself sharing stories she hadn't told in years. Her grandmother's patient teaching, the subtle signs that indicated bee health or disease, the almost mystical connection that developed between a skilled keeper and her colonies. With each story, she felt her confidence returning, not as the reckless fearlessness of inexperience, but as the deeper assurance that comes from understanding both the dangers and the skills needed to meet them. This story shows us how fear can eclipse our own competence, making us forget everything we know about working skillfully with danger. Kamala discovered that her terror of bee stings had grown so large that it blocked her access to generations of inherited wisdom about beekeeping. Buddhism teaches that fear often creates the very conditions it seeks to avoid. When we approach challenges with panic, we lose access to the calm presence that makes skillful action possible. When we learn to breathe with our fears instead of holding our breath against them, we can reclaim our ability to serve what we love even in the presence of real danger. Let us rest here for a moment, feeling our own breath moving naturally and easily. Notice how your body knows how to breathe without your conscious control. How this most essential function continues whether you are afraid or calm, awake or sleeping. There is wisdom in this natural rhythm that needs no improvement, no fixing, only recognition. In the mountains 3 days north of Kamala's village, where the air grew thin and pine trees clung to rocky slopes with ancient determination, there lived a woman named Sita, who carved prayer wheels from sacred juniper wood. Her workshop was built into the side of a cliff, its windows facing east toward the distant peaks where snow never melted, and the first light of dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold. Sita had learned her craft from a master carver named Thanka, an elderly man who had spent his life creating objects of devotion, prayer wheels that spun mantras into the morning air, meditation beads worn smooth by countless fingers, small Buddha statues that seemed to radiate the peace of the maker who had shaped them. Under his patient guidance, Sita had developed extraordinary skill, her hands capable of coaxing the most intricate details from blocks of raw wood. But Thanka had grown old, his eyes dimmed by years of close work, his hands stiff with the accumulated arthritis of decades spent gripping carving tools. On the morning when he could no longer see clearly enough to guide his knife safely around the delicate curves of a prayer wheel's surface, he had laid down his tools and walked into the forest, following the ancient tradition of masters who knew when their time of active service had ended. Before leaving, he had given Sita everything: his tools, his workshop, his reputation, and most importantly, his unfinished commissions. "You have the skill," he told her, his voice gentle with complete confidence. "Trust your hands. They know what they know." But what Thanka had not anticipated, and what Sita herself had not understood until too late, was how completely her confidence had depended on his presence. Under his watchful eye, her hands had moved with surety and precision, creating work that earned admiration throughout the region. Alone, facing the blank wood with no master to guide or correct her, she found herself paralyzed by a fear she had never experienced before. What if she ruined the wood? Each piece of juniper was precious, some of it harvested from trees hundreds of years old, their grain dense with the slow patience of high-altitude growth. A single mistaken cut could destroy hours of work, waste material that could never be replaced, disappoint customers who had commissioned pieces for the most sacred purposes. What if her work wasn't good enough? The prayer wheels she carved would be spun by devoted practitioners seeking merit, accumulating blessings, connecting with the divine through the repetitive motion of the wheel and the mantras written on paper, scrolls inside. If her carving was flawed, if the wheel didn't spin smoothly or the proportions were wrong, she would be interfering with other people's spiritual practice, creating obstacles to their devotion. What if she had never been as skilled as Thanka believed? Perhaps her apparent mastery had been an illusion, created by his constant guidance and correction. Perhaps alone, she would reveal herself to be nothing more than a clumsy apprentice who had fooled everyone, including herself, about her true capabilities. The fears fed on themselves, growing stronger with each passing day. Sita would enter her workshop each morning with determination, select a piece of wood, arrange her tools, and then find herself sitting motionless for hours, unable to make the first cut. The wood seemed to mock her hesitation, its smooth surface unmarked by any sign of the prayer wheel it could become. Weeks passed, then months. The unfinished commissions accumulated dust. Customers began to inquire politely about the delay, then more insistently. Then finally, they began to cancel their orders and seek other carvers. Sita's savings dwindled as she lived without income, spending her days in the workshop, but producing nothing. Paralyzed by the gap between what she knew she should be able to do and what she seemed capable of doing alone. She tried various strategies to break through the paralysis. She would set deadlines for herself, promising to begin cutting by a certain hour, only to watch the time pass in continued inaction. She would start with practice pieces, thinking that working on less precious wood might restore her confidence. But even faced with common pine, her hands refused to move decisively. She attempted to recreate the conditions under which she had learned, speaking aloud to herself in Thangka's voice, trying to imagine his presence guiding her movements. But the workshop felt hollow without his actual presence, and her own voice sounded thin and uncertain rather than wise and encouraging. The isolation began to affect her sleep, her appetite, her connection to the world beyond her workshop. She stopped visiting the village below, embarrassed by her inability to fulfill her commitments. She avoided the paths where she might encounter people who knew her reputation, who might ask about her work or commission new pieces. Her days contracted around the single, impossible task of making the first cut in a piece of wood. On the morning when everything changed, Sita woke before dawn, as had become her habit, hoping that the early hours might somehow be different from all the other hours she had wasted in futile hesitation. She lit her oil lamp, heated water for tea, and walked to her workshop with the same mixture of hope and dread that had characterized every morning for months. But today, instead of facing another piece of untouched wood, she found a stranger sitting quietly in her workshop, examining one of Thangka's finished prayer wheels by lamplight. The woman was clearly a nun, her head shaved, her robes simple and travel-worn. She looked up as Sita entered, her eyes bright with intelligence and something that might have been amusement. "Good morning," the nun said peacefully. "I hope you don't mind my intrusion. Your door was open, and this work..." She gestured toward the prayer wheel in her hands. "This work called to me. I am Pima." Good morning. I am Sita." The presence of another person in her sanctuary of failed attempts felt both intrusive and somehow relieving. "That piece was made by my teacher, Thangka. I am his successor." "Ah." Pima continued her examination of the prayer wheel, running her fingers along its carved surface with obvious appreciation. "Exquisite work. The proportions are perfect, the surface smooth as water, the weight distributed precisely for effortless spinning. This maker understood not just the technique of carving, but the purpose of what he was creating." Sita felt a familiar stab of inadequacy. Yes, Thangka's work was perfect. That was exactly the problem. How could she possibly create anything that would honor his legacy, that would serve its sacred purpose with such flawless skill? "And where is your work?" Pima asked gently, looking around the workshop. "I see many beautiful tools, much fine wood, but no pieces in progress." The question Sita had been dreading for months. She gestured helplessly toward a workbench covered with untouched blocks of juniper, each one selected with care, each one abandoned before the first cut. I find myself unable to begin." Unable or unwilling? The distinction caught Sita by surprise. "I'm not sure what you mean." Pema set down Thangka's prayer wheel and selected one of the uncut blocks from the workbench, holding it up to catch the lamplight. "This is beautiful wood, old growth, harvested from a tree that lived perhaps 3 centuries. Can you see the prayer wheel hidden inside it?" Despite her months of paralysis, Sita found herself looking at the wood with her trained eye, automatically assessing its grain, its density, the way its natural patterns would complement the carved design. Yes, she said softly. There, following that line of darker heartwood, the wheel would sit naturally in the center, with the handle emerging from this narrower section. Excellent. So the knowledge is still present, still accessible. Pema turned the block slowly, letting Sita's eye follow the possibilities contained in its uncarved form. Now tell me, what prevents you from releasing the prayer wheel that already exists inside this wood? The question forced Sita to articulate fears she had been carrying wordlessly for months. What if I cut wrong? What if I ruin it? What if my work isn't worthy of such beautiful material, or adequate for its sacred purpose? All reasonable concerns, Pema agreed. Now let me ask you something else. What happens to the prayer wheel inside this wood if you never make any cuts at all? The answer was obvious, but somehow shocking in its simplicity. It remains trapped, unrealized, useless. So by trying to avoid ruining the wood, you guarantee that it will never become what it has the potential to become. Pema's voice held no judgment, only the clear observation of logical consequence. Sita stared at the block in her hands, seeing it suddenly from an entirely new perspective. In her months of paralysis, she had been so focused on the possibility of failure that she had never considered the certainty of failure that came with complete inaction. The wood would age, crack, eventually decay, never having served its intended purpose because she had been too afraid of imperfection to risk any action at all. But what if I'm not skilled enough? She asked, voicing the deepest fear. What if I was never as good as Thangka believed? An interesting question, Pema replied. Tell me, how does one become skilled at carving? Practice, years of practice, making mistakes, learning from them, gradually developing precision, and... Sita stopped, hearing her own words with sudden clarity. The very thing she feared, making mistakes, producing imperfect work, was the necessary path to the skill she sought. By avoiding mistakes, she was also avoiding the only process that could develop her abilities. There's no way to become masterful without making many pieces that are less than masterful, she said slowly. And is there shame in being a student rather than a master? Sita considered this. When she had worked under Thangka's guidance, she had accepted her apprentice status naturally, understanding that learning required imperfection, that growth came through practice rather than through avoiding challenge. Somehow, being alone had made her expect herself to be immediately perfect rather than gradually improving. I think, she said carefully, I have been expecting myself to be Thangka rather than to be myself becoming skillful. Pema smiled, the expression transforming her austere features into something radiant. Now we approach the heart of the matter. You cannot be Thangka. He has already lived that life, created that body of work, made his particular contribution to the world. You can only be Sita, discovering what prayer wheels want to emerge from your hands, what particular gifts you have to offer to the ancient tradition of sacred carving. The oil lamp flickered as a mountain breeze stirred through the workshop, casting dancing shadows on the walls lined with Thangka's tools. Outside, the first light of dawn was beginning to paint the eastern peaks, and birds were stirring in the pine trees, their calls clear and sweet in the thin mountain air. But how do I know what my gifts are if I never test them? Sita asked. Exactly. The only way to discover your unique contribution is to begin making things, to allow your hands to explore the wood, to learn what emerges when you trust your training and curiosity rather than demanding immediate perfection. Pema picked up one of Thangka's carving knives, testing its edge against her thumb. Sharp and well-maintained. Your teacher left you excellent tools. But tools, no matter how fine, cannot do the work by themselves. They require hands willing to guide them, hearts willing to risk imperfection in service of learning. As if the tool had its own will, Sita found herself taking the knife from Pema's hands, feeling its familiar weight, the way its handle settled naturally into her grip. Her body remembered the proper position, the angle of approach, the controlled pressure that would remove thin curls of wood without gouging or splitting the grain. "Just hold it for now," Pema suggested. "No need to cut anything. Simply remember what it feels like to hold the tools of your trade." The knife felt right in Sita's hands, natural in a way that nothing else had felt natural in months. Her fingers automatically found the correct position. Her wrist settled into the proper angle. Despite months of disuse, her body had not forgotten the skills that years of practice had ingrained into muscle memory. "Now," Pema said quietly, "what if we approach this differently? Instead of trying to create a perfect prayer wheel, what if you simply had a conversation with this piece of wood? What if you made small cuts, gentle explorations, just to see what the wood wants to tell you about itself?" The suggestion felt revolutionary. Instead of the crushing pressure to produce a masterpiece worthy of Thanka's legacy, she could simply explore, experiment, play with the relationship between blade and grain that had once brought her such deep satisfaction. Not trying to make anything in particular, not trying to make anything except contact with your own skill, your own curiosity about what lives inside this wood. Sita positioned the block securely in her carving vise, adjusting it until the grain caught the light at the perfect angle for reading its patterns. The first cut would be tiny, exploratory, just testing how the knife moved through this particular piece of wood, how the grain responded to the blade's direction. She raised the knife, positioned it carefully, and then paused. The old fear rose up. What if she cut wrong? What if she ruined everything from the very first stroke? But Pema's words echoed in her awareness. What happens to the prayer wheel if you never make any cuts at all? And suddenly, the choice was clear. She could guarantee failure by never trying, or she could risk imperfection in service of possibility. The knife bit into the wood with a soft sound, like a whispered word. A thin curl of golden juniper peeled away from the block, releasing the sharp, clean scent that had filled her childhood memories of watching Thanka work. The cut was clean, precise, following the grain naturally. "Beautiful," Pema observed. "Look how the wood welcomes your blade, how naturally it parts to reveal what lies beneath. Your hands remember everything they learned." Encouraged, Sita made another small cut, then another. Each one revealed more about this particular piece of wood, its density, its willingness to accept detail work, the way its grain would enhance or challenge the traditional design she had in mind. But more than that, each cut reminded her hands of their own competence, their learned ability to work with wood rather than against it. "I had forgotten," she murmured, making another tiny exploration along what would become the prayer wheel's circumference. How much the wood itself teaches you, how it guides the carving if you listen carefully enough. "The wood is your first teacher," Pema agreed, "more patient than any human master, more honest than any textbook. It will tell you exactly what it can and cannot do, if you approach it with respect rather than force." As the morning light grew stronger, Sita found herself settling into a rhythm she had thought was lost forever. Small cut followed, small cut, each one revealing more of the prayer wheel's potential form. She was not yet committed to any particular design, simply following the wood's guidance about where it wanted to be shaped, where it preferred to remain whole. "Tell me about your teacher," Pema said, settling cross-legged on a cushion near the workbench where she could observe without interfering. "How did he approach his work?" Sita paused, her knife poised above the wood, considering the question. He was patient, infinitely patient. I never saw him hurry, never saw him force a cut that the wood didn't want to accept. He would sometimes sit with a piece for hours before making the first mark, just studying it, understanding its character. And when he did cut, it was like meditation. His breathing would settle into this deep, steady rhythm. His movements became very precise, but also very fluid, as if the knife was moving itself, and he was simply guiding it along the path it wanted to follow. As she spoke, Sita realized that her own breathing had begun to settle into that familiar pattern. Her shoulders releasing tension she hadn't even noticed she was carrying. The work itself was teaching her body how to be present with it, how to find the state of relaxed concentration that made skillful action possible. It sounds like he understood that carving is a practice, not just a craft, Pema observed. A practice? Something you do not just to produce objects, but to cultivate certain qualities of mind and heart. Patience, attention, respect for materials, willingness to work with what is rather than forcing what you think should be. Sita made another exploratory cut, this one slightly deeper, beginning to establish what would become the prayer wheel's basic proportions. The wood responded beautifully, the grain flowing around the emerging curves like water around stones. I think, she said slowly, I had been thinking of carving as something I did to make a living, to fulfill commissions, to maintain Thangka's reputation. But when I was learning, it felt different, more like a way of being present with mystery. Each piece of wood was a puzzle to solve, a conversation to have. And now? Sita considered this as she worked, her hands moving with growing confidence as they remembered their own competence. Now it feels like coming home to myself, like remembering who I am when I'm not afraid of who I'm not. The morning sun was climbing higher now, sending shafts of golden light through the workshop's eastern windows. Dust motes danced in the beams, and the scent of pine sap warming in the sunlight mixed with the clean smell of fresh wood shavings. There is a story, Pema said, about a young monk who was learning to copy sacred texts. Sita smiled, recognizing the pattern of teaching through story that was so familiar from her time with Thangka. Her hands continued their careful exploration of the wood, while her mind opened to receive whatever wisdom Pema wanted to share. This monk had beautiful handwriting when he practiced on ordinary paper with everyday ink. But when he was given precious paper made from mulberry bark and gold ink mixed with ground pearls, his hand would tremble. His characters became cramped and ugly. The more valuable the materials, the worse his writing became. A shaving of juniper curled away from Sita's blade, so thin it was translucent in the morning light. She was beginning to see the prayer wheel more clearly now, not as a finished object she had to create perfectly, but as a form that wanted to emerge from this particular piece of wood. His teacher watched this struggle for many months, saying nothing. Finally, when the young monk was in despair about ever being able to create texts worthy of the precious materials, the teacher gave him a new assignment. Pema paused to examine the growing pile of wood shavings at Sita's feet, noting their uniformity, the way each curl held its shape, signs that the blade was sharp and the cuts were being made with proper technique. What assignment? Sita asked, genuinely curious now as she continued her careful work. The teacher gave him the most precious paper in the monastery, ancient, handmade, worth more than most people earned in a year, and the most expensive ink, ground from lapis lazuli and gold, mixed with water blessed by 7 generations of masters. Sita's knife paused in its movement. She could imagine the young monk's terror at being given such irreplaceable materials. But instead of asking him to copy sacred texts, the teacher told him to practice writing his own name, just his name, over and over, until he had filled every sheet of the precious paper. His name? Not sacred teachings? Just his name. The teacher explained that if he could not write his own name beautifully on precious paper, how could he ever hope to write the Buddha's words? If he could not trust his hand with something so familiar, so personal, how could he trust it with the most sacred teachings? Sita found herself nodding as she worked. There was profound logic in the teaching. Start with what you know absolutely. Build confidence with the familiar before attempting the challenging. What happened? The young monk was terrified of wasting such valuable materials on something as mundane as writing his name. But he trusted his teacher, so he began. The first attempts were just as cramped and ugly as his previous work on precious paper. A bird landed on the workshop's windowsill, a small mountain finch with bright yellow markings. It observed Sita's work with curious attention, head cocked at various angles as if trying to understand what was being created. But as he continued, Pema went on. Something interesting happened. Writing his name was so automatic, so deeply known, that his attention began to shift away from fear of ruining the materials and toward the simple pleasure of forming familiar characters. His hand began to remember its natural grace. Sita was making longer cuts now, more confident strokes that began to define the prayer wheel's general form. The wood was revealing its willingness to be shaped, its eagerness to become something useful and beautiful. By the time he had filled half the precious paper, his handwriting had returned to its natural beauty. By the time he finished the assignment, he was writing his name more beautifully than he ever had before, even on ordinary materials. Because he had stopped being afraid of the preciousness? Partly, but also because he had remembered that his skill was not dependent on the materials. The grace was in his hand, in his years of training, in his natural ability. The precious paper couldn't give him skill he didn't have, but it also couldn't take away skill he did have. The finch flew away with a flash of yellow wings, but its brief presence had somehow blessed the morning's work. Sita found herself smiling as she continued carving, feeling a lightness she hadn't experienced in months. "I think," she said, "I had been making the wood more important than my relationship with it, thinking that because it was precious, I had to approach it differently than I approached practice pieces. And what do you understand now?" Sita considered this as she made a series of small cuts that began to establish the prayer wheel's cylindrical form. That wood is wood, precious or common, it responds to the same skills, the same attention, the same respect for its grain and character. The preciousness doesn't change what I need to know about working with it. Exactly so. The young monk learned that precious materials deserve his best skill, but they don't require different skills. The same hand that wrote beautifully on practice paper could write beautifully on gold-illuminated manuscripts if he trusted it to do what it already knew how to do. The morning was warming now, and Sita could hear the sounds of village life drifting up from the valley below, children calling to each other, the distant sound of temple bells, the rhythmic thunk of someone chopping wood. Her own work was beginning to establish its own rhythm, the steady pattern of cut and pause, assess and adjust that characterized skillful carving. "There's another part to the story," Pema continued, settling more comfortably on her cushion as if preparing for a longer conversation. "Tell me." When the young monk had finished filling all the precious paper with his name, written more beautifully than ever before, his teacher examined every sheet carefully. Then he selected the most perfectly written characters and cut them out, creating individual pieces that could be used to illustrate the most sacred texts. Sita's hand stilled for a moment as she absorbed this twist in the tale. The monk was amazed. His name, his ordinary, personal, mundane name, was being incorporated into texts that would be studied and revered for generations. "How can this be appropriate?" he asked. "These are sacred teachings, not personal documents." A breeze stirred through the workshop, carrying the scent of pine needles and the faint sound of water running over stones in the stream that flowed past Sita's cliffside home. She resumed her carving, her movements now so natural and confident that she could work and listen simultaneously without losing focus on either activity. The teacher's response was simple. "When you write your name with complete presence and skill, when you bring your full attention and respect to the formation of each character, when you honor the materials by doing your finest work, then your name becomes sacred too. It becomes worthy of inclusion in any text because it represents the same qualities we seek to cultivate through studying sacred teachings." The teaching landed in Sita's awareness with the force of complete recognition. She looked down at the prayer wheel taking shape under her hands, not a copy of one of Thangka's designs, but something uniquely emerging from her own understanding of the wood, her own sense of proportion and balance. "My work doesn't have to be identical to Thangka's work to be worthy," she said quietly. "Your work cannot be identical to Thangka's work," Pema replied gently. He had his hands, his eyes, his particular relationship with wood and form. You have yours. The tradition doesn't need another Thangka. It needs the first Sita. The words seemed to unlock something in Sita's chest, a tightness she hadn't even realized was there. For months, she had been trying to channel her teacher's skill through her own hands, trying to make her work match his instead of letting her work express her own understanding of the craft he had taught her. "But how do I know if my understanding is correct? How do I know if my work serves its purpose?" "Tell me," Pema said, "what is the purpose of a prayer wheel?" Sita continued carving as she considered the question, her blade removing small, precise amounts of wood with each stroke. "To accumulate merit through the spinning of mantras. Each turn of the wheel is equivalent to reciting the prayers written on the paper inside. So the wheel allows practitioners to generate merit even while walking or working or doing other things. And what makes a prayer wheel effective for this purpose? It has to spin smoothly, without wobbling or catching. The balance has to be perfect, the weight properly distributed. The proportions should be pleasing to the eye and comfortable to hold. And it should be made with devotion, with the understanding that it's a sacred object." As she spoke, Sita realized she was describing exactly what she was creating. The emerging prayer wheel in her hands was developing all of these qualities, not because she was copying Thangka's approach, but because she was applying the principles he had taught her to her own understanding of wood, balance, and proportion. "Then trust your hands," Pema said simply. "They know what makes a prayer wheel work. They have absorbed not just Thangka's techniques, but his understanding of the purpose behind the techniques. Let them create what they know how to create." The sun had climbed high enough now to fill the workshop with warm, golden light. Sita's prayer wheel was taking on a definite character, more slender than Thangka's preferred proportions, with a subtle taper that followed the natural lines in this particular piece of juniper. It was recognizably in the traditional style, but also distinctly her own interpretation of that tradition. "It's beautiful," she murmured, turning the partially carved wheel in the light to assess its developing form. "Because it's honest," Pema replied. "It reflects your true skill, your genuine understanding, your personal relationship with the tradition you inherited. There's no pretense in it, no attempt to be something other than what it is. Let us pause here, breathing gently with this teaching. Feel your own hands as they rest, whether they work with wood or clay, thread or soil, pen or keyboard. Every skilled hand carries wisdom accumulated through practice, through making mistakes, through patient attention to craft. There is no need to compare your hands to any others, only to trust what they have learned through their own experience. As the day progressed and Sita continued her work, visitors began to arrive at the workshop. First came Lamo, an elderly woman from the village who had commissioned a prayer wheel months ago for her grandson's ordination as a monk. "I heard sounds of carving," Lamo said, peering through the open doorway. "Are you working again, child?" Sita felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. Someone was about to see her imperfect work, judge her against Thangka's standard. But then she remembered Pema's teaching about honesty, about allowing her work to be what it genuinely was, rather than pretending to be something else. "Yes, Auntie, I am working again. Please, come see." Lahamo approached the workbench with the careful respect that mountain people always showed to sacred objects in process. She examined Sita's partially carved prayer wheel with knowledgeable eyes. She had handled dozens of such objects over her long life. Knew good work from poor work. "This is beautiful, child. The proportions are graceful, the surface smooth and even. It will spin like silk when it's finished." She paused, tilting her head slightly. "It looks different from Thangka's usual style. More elegant, perhaps. Less heavy." Instead of the shame Sita had expected to feel at having her work recognized as different, she felt a flutter of pride. This piece of juniper seemed to want those proportions. The grain flows naturally in these lines. "Ah, yes. A good carver listens to the wood. Thangka always said that." Lamo smiled. "When will you finish my grandson's wheel? The ordination is in 3 weeks." "I can begin it as soon as I complete this one," Sita heard herself saying. The words surprised her. She hadn't consciously decided to accept new commissions, but apparently her hands had already decided for her. After Lahamo left, other visitors arrived throughout the day. Word spread quickly through the small mountain community that Sita was carving again, and people came to check on long-delayed orders, to commission new pieces, or simply to satisfy their curiosity about what the young woman was creating in Thangka's old workshop. Each interaction required Sita to show her work, to explain her approach, to accept evaluation of her skill. But with each encounter, she found it easier to let her work speak for itself rather than trying to apologize for its differences from Thangka's style or defend its worthiness to carry on his tradition. "Your teacher would be proud," said Norbu, a woodcutter who had supplied Thangka with timber for 20 years. "This work has his precision, but also something fresh, something that belongs to you alone." "Good. The tradition needs to grow, not just repeat itself." By late afternoon, Sita had accepted commissions for 6 new prayer wheels, 2 meditation bead sets, and a small Buddha statue for the village temple. The orders represented more work than she had completed in the previous 6 months combined, and more income than she had dared hope for. But more important than the practical benefits was the restoration of her sense of purpose. Each commission connected her to someone's spiritual practice, someone's search for merit and meaning. Her work mattered not because it perfectly replicated what had come before, but because it served the same fundamental purpose with skill and devotion. "I understand now," she told Pema, as they shared evening tea in the workshop, surrounded by the sweet scent of fresh wood shavings and the satisfied atmosphere that comes from a day of meaningful work. I was trying to honor Thangka by becoming him instead of honoring him by becoming the best version of myself. Pema nodded, her eyes bright with approval. And what have you learned about fear? Sita considered the question as she examined her hands in the lamplight. They were slightly sore from the day's unaccustomed work, marked with small nicks and stained with the sap of fresh-cut juniper. But they looked like carver's hands again, hands that belonged to someone who worked with wood for sacred purposes. Fear was trying to protect me from making mistakes, from failing, from disappointing people. But it was protecting me right out of my own life, right out of the work that gives my life meaning. And what about the mistakes you were so afraid of making? Sita smiled, remembering several small errors she had made during the day. A cut that went slightly too deep, requiring adjustment to the design. A moment when she had worked against the grain instead of with it, leaving a rough patch that needed sanding smooth. I made several mistakes today, and each one taught me something about this particular piece of wood, about how my tools work, about what I need to pay attention to more carefully. The mistakes were useful. This is wisdom, Pema said approvingly. To understand that mistakes are not enemies of learning, but necessary parts of learning. That the perfection we seek comes through embracing imperfection as a teacher, not through avoiding it as a threat. Outside, the mountain evening was settling in with its characteristic stillness. The air was growing cool, carrying the scent of pine and the distant sound of temple bells calling the faithful to evening prayers. Inside the workshop, the oil lamps cast a warm glow on tools arranged ready for tomorrow's work and on the prayer wheel that now looked unmistakably like what it was meant to become. "Will you stay the night?" Sita asked. "The road down the mountain is treacherous in darkness, and I have a guest room where traveling practitioners sometimes rest." "I would be grateful for shelter," Pema replied, "and perhaps in the morning you could show me how you plan to finish this piece. I am always interested in learning about different approaches to sacred work." As they prepared to close the workshop for the night, Sita took one last look at her prayer wheel, now clearly recognizable despite being unfinished. It bore the unmistakable marks of skillful work. Clean cuts, proper proportions, surfaces that would take a beautiful finish. But it also bore the equally unmistakable marks of her own aesthetic sense, her own understanding of how form and function could work together in service of sacred purpose. "Thank you," she said quietly to Pema, "for helping me remember what I knew but had forgotten how to trust." "The knowledge was always yours," Pema replied. "I simply reminded you to look for it in your hands instead of in your fears." They extinguished the lamps and walked together toward the house, leaving the workshop to rest in peaceful darkness. But the prayer wheel remained on its stand, gathering moonlight on its emerging curves, patient and serene as it waited for tomorrow's work to bring it closer to completion. In the morning, Sita woke before dawn with an unfamiliar feeling, eagerness to begin the day's carving. For the first time in months, her first thought was not about what she might do wrong, but about what she wanted to accomplish. The prayer wheel needed its final shaping, the interior cavity carved to hold the prayer scrolls, the surface sanded to silk smoothness before the finishing oils were applied. She found Pema already awake, sitting in meditation in the small garden behind the house, her figure still and peaceful in the gray light of early dawn. Sita did not interrupt, but prepared tea quietly and settled on her own cushion to wait for the sun to rise over the eastern peaks. When Pema opened her eyes, she found Sita watching the first rays of sunlight paint the workshop's windows gold. "Ready for another day of carving?" she asked. "More ready than I've been for anything in months," Sita replied, offering her guest a cup of butter tea fragrant with salt and herbs. I keep thinking about that story you told yesterday, about the monk learning to write his name on precious paper. What about it particularly? The idea that when you bring complete attention and skill to any work, even writing your own name, it becomes worthy of inclusion in sacred texts. That the sacredness comes not from the subject matter, but from the quality of attention brought to the task. Pema sipped her tea thoughtfully, watching a golden eagle circle high above the valley, riding the morning thermals with effortless grace. And how does this apply to your carving? I think I had been separating my personal skill from the sacred purpose of the work, as if they were two different things, as if I needed to somehow transcend my own abilities to create truly sacred objects. Sita paused, trying to articulate an understanding that felt new and fragile. But maybe it's the opposite. Maybe I serve the sacred purpose best by bringing all of my personal skill, all of my individual understanding to the work. Yes, the Buddha taught that we serve the Dharma not by disappearing ourselves, but by offering our gifts fully, by bringing our complete presence to whatever we undertake in service of awakening. They finished their tea in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher and begin to warm the stones of the garden path. Soon it would be time to return to the workshop, to continue the ancient dance between human skill and natural material that transformed blocks of wood into objects of devotion. Today, Sita said, rising from her cushion, I will finish my first prayer wheel as a master rather than an apprentice. It may not be perfect, but it will be honest. It will be the best work I can do with the skills I actually have, in service of a purpose larger than my own comfort. That, Pema replied, is the only kind of perfection that matters. This story shows us how perfectionism can paralyze us, making us so afraid of imperfection that we never allow our skills to develop through practice. Sita discovered that her fear of making mistakes had blocked her access to abilities she had already developed through years of training. Buddhism teaches that mastery comes not from avoiding errors, but from embracing the learning that errors provide. When we stop trying to be perfect copies of our teachers and begin to express our own understanding of what they taught us, we honor their legacy while creating something genuinely new. Let us rest here for a moment, feeling the truth of this teaching settle into our awareness like morning dew on mountain flowers. Notice your own breath, how it continues without effort, without your conscious control. There is something you already know how to do perfectly, something you've never needed to learn, because it was given to you with life itself. Simply rest in this natural rhythm and allow these teachings to work their quiet transformation. In a coastal village where fishing boats returned each evening painted gold by the setting sun, there lived a woman named Indira who wove the nets that held the community's livelihood. Her small house stood near the harbor, its windows facing west toward the endless water, its rooms filled with the steady rhythm of her loom and the salt-sweet scent of ocean air. Indira had learned net weaving from her mother, who had learned it from her mother before her, in an unbroken line of women stretching back beyond memory. The knowledge lived in her fingers. How to gauge the proper tension for different kinds of fishing. How to create knots that would hold under tremendous strain. How to weave patterns strong enough to haul in nets heavy with silver fish, yet fine enough not to damage the delicate creatures they sought to capture. But net weaving was more than craft. It was responsibility. Every net that left Indira's hands carried the hopes of a fishing family, the promise of food for children, the difference between prosperity and poverty for entire households. When a net failed, It was not just thread that broke, but livelihoods that hung in the balance. The fishermen trusted her completely. They would bring her their worn nets for repair, their old nets for strengthening, their requests for new nets sized precisely for their boats and the fish they sought. Some wanted nets for the small silver fish that schooled in shallow waters. Others needed the heavy, coarse nets that could hold the large, deep-water fish that fought like demons when caught. Each net was different, each weaving unique to its purpose. Indira took pride in this trust, in the way fishermen would examine her work with knowing eyes and nod their approval. Her nets lasted longer than those made by other weavers, held stronger under stress, required fewer repairs. She had achieved something rare in any craft, a reputation for reliability that meant her work was sought throughout the region. But success brought its own challenges. As word of her skill spread, more and more fishermen came seeking her nets. Orders accumulated faster than she could fill them. Men would wait weeks for nets woven by her hands, paying higher prices rather than accepting inferior work from other sources. The pressure began to affect her sleep, her appetite, her relationships with friends and neighbors. She would wake before dawn and work until long past dark, her fingers moving constantly in the ancient patterns while her mind calculated how many nets she still owed, how many families were waiting for her work, how impossible it was becoming to meet all the demands placed upon her skill. She tried working faster, sacrificing the meditative rhythm that had always characterized her weaving for the urgent pace that the backlog of orders seemed to require. She began skipping the careful inspection that had been part of her process, trusting her fingers to maintain their usual precision without the conscious oversight that had once guided every knot. But speed and craft proved to be uneasy companions. Working faster meant working with less attention, less presence, less of the quiet focus that allowed her fingers to sense exactly how tight each knot should be, exactly where each strand should lie for maximum strength. Small imperfections began to creep into her work. Knots tied slightly too loose, spacing that was almost but not quite even, tension that varied in ways too subtle to notice until the net was tested by actual use. The first failure came on a calm morning when Ravi, one of her oldest customers, returned from fishing with his net torn in a dozen places. Not the natural wear that any net would show after months of use, but sudden tears that spoke of fundamental weakness in the weaving itself. The knots gave way, he explained, his voice carefully neutral, but his disappointment obvious. Not from a big fish or rough handling, but from ordinary use. The net just came apart. Indira examined the damaged net with growing horror. She could see her own work in every section, recognized the patterns her fingers had woven just 3 months earlier, but she could also see what had gone wrong. Knots that looked adequate, but lacked the precise tension needed for strength, spacing that appeared regular, but created weak points under stress. "I will replace it immediately," she told Ravi, though both of them knew that a replacement net would take 2 weeks to complete, 2 weeks when his boat would sit idle or use inadequate borrowed nets that might cost him the season's best fishing. "It happens," Ravi said generously. But Indira could see the concern in his eyes. A fisherman's net was not just a tool, but a lifeline, and its failure could mean hunger for his family, debt that might take years to repay. That night, Indira sat in her weaving room surrounded by half-finished nets, examining her recent work with new attention. What she found made her stomach clench with shame. Net after net showed the same subtle signs of compromised quality, workmanship that looked adequate to casual inspection, but lacked the deep integrity that came from patient, mindful weaving. She had betrayed not just Ravi's trust, but the trust of every fisherman who depended on her work. In her hurry to meet everyone's needs, she had served no one well. The ancient craft passed down through generations of women had been diminished by her impatience, her ego's desire to be the weaver who could meet every demand rather than the weaver who did only what she could do well. The next morning brought more troubling news. Sunil, a young fisherman who had saved for months to buy one of her nets, appeared at her door carrying a net that had failed catastrophically on its first serious use. "The whole corner section gave way," he said, his voice tight with the strain of lost income and damaged pride. "Lost half my catch and nearly lost the net itself. My father said your nets were the best. What happened?" Indira had no answer that would satisfy either of them. She could see exactly what had happened. In her rush to complete his order, she had woven the corner reinforcements with insufficient attention, creating a weakness that was invisible until tested by the full strain of a loaded net. "I don't understand," Sunil continued, his confusion more painful to Indira than anger would have been. "Everyone says you're the master weaver, that your nets never fail. I paid twice what other weavers charge because I trusted your reputation." The word hit Indira like a physical blow. Reputation. She had been so focused on maintaining her reputation as the weaver who could meet any demand that she had destroyed her reputation as the weaver whose nets could be trusted absolutely. After Sunil left with her promise of a replacement and compensation for his lost catch, Indira sat in her weaving room staring at the loom that had been her pride and livelihood. The threads stretched before her seemed to mock her pretensions to mastery, their simple honesty highlighting the dishonesty of work done in haste rather than with proper care. For the first time in years, she did not know how to begin the day's work. Every net on her schedule represented a family's trust, and she no longer felt worthy of that trust. How could she continue weaving when her weaving had proven unreliable? How could she accept payment for work when recent work had cost her customers far more than they had paid? As she sat paralyzed by the weight of her failures, a voice spoke from the doorway. "The nets are beautiful, even with their troubles." Indira looked up to find an elderly woman standing in the entrance to her workroom, examining one of the failed nets with the attention of someone who understood weaving. She was clearly a fisherwoman herself, her hands marked by decades of handling nets and lines, her clothes practical and salt-stained. "I am Maya," the woman said, settling uninvited on a stool near the loom. "I have been weaving nets for 40 years, and I have never seen such fine, even stitches. Your basic technique is flawless." "But the nets failed," Indira said bitterly. "Beautiful technique means nothing if the nets don't hold." Maya picked up a section of the damaged net, running her experienced fingers along its weave. "Tell me, child, how many nets were you weaving when you made this one?" The question surprised Indira. I had 12 commissions in progress. I was trying to work on several each day, moving between them to keep all the orders advancing." "Ah." Maya's voice held understanding rather than judgment. "And how many nets had you typically worked on at one time when your reputation was first being built?" Indira had to think back to her earlier years, when orders came slowly and she had time to focus completely on each piece. One, sometimes two if one was waiting for materials or drying, but usually just one at a time. And how did you approach each net then? The question brought back memories of a different way of working. Mornings that began with examining the specific requirements of a single net. Afternoons spent in deep concentration on that net alone. Evenings spent inspecting every section before setting it aside. Each net had been a complete project, receiving her full attention from beginning to end. I would focus entirely on one net until it was finished, she said slowly. I would study what kind of fishing it was meant for, what stresses it would face, what patterns would serve those needs best. Each net felt like a conversation with the fisherman who would use it. And now her nets felt like items on a production schedule, tasks to be completed efficiently rather than relationships to be honored fully. Each net received fragments of her attention, scattered moments between work on other projects, hurried sessions when her mind was already moving ahead to the next obligation. Now I weave many nets, but know none of them deeply, she admitted. Maya nodded, her weathered face creased with sympathy. This is a common trap for skilled workers. Success brings more demands than can be met with the same quality that created the success. We begin to think we must meet every request, serve every customer, or we are failing in our responsibility. The older woman moved to Indira's loom, examining the net currently in progress with professional attention. But what is our real responsibility? To make as many nets as possible, or to make each net as well as possible? The question hung in the salt-scented air, like the cry of gulls over the harbor. Through the window, Indira could see fishing boats preparing for the evening's work, their crews checking nets and lines with the careful attention of people whose lives depended on their equipment's reliability. Each net as well as possible, Indira said quietly. A net that fails endangers not just the catch, but the boat, the crew, the families who depend on that income. Yes, so what serves the fishing community better? One weaver trying to supply everyone with adequate nets, or one weaver supplying some people with nets they can trust completely? The logic was undeniable, but accepting it meant accepting something difficult. You're saying I should turn away customers, refuse orders. I'm saying you should serve your true capacity rather than pretending to have capacity you don't possess. Maya's voice was gentle but firm. A weaver who promises what she cannot deliver serves no one well. A weaver who delivers exactly what she promises serves everyone perfectly. Indira looked around her workroom, counting the half-finished nets that represented promises she was struggling to keep. 12 nets in various stages of completion, each one receiving less attention than it deserved, each one vulnerable to the kind of failures that had already damaged her reputation and cost her customers their livelihoods. But if I reduce the number of nets I make, people will go to other weavers. I'll lose income, lose my place in the community. Will you? Maya asked mildly. Let me tell you about a weaver named Kamala who lived in a village much like this one. Indira settled back in her chair, recognizing the beginning of a teaching story. Outside, the afternoon light was beginning to slant through the windows, casting long shadows across the room filled with nets and thread. Kamala was skilled beyond her years, creating nets so beautiful that fishermen would travel great distances to commission her work. Like you, she found herself overwhelmed with orders, trying to meet every request that came to her door. A pelican flew past the window, its wings barely moving as it glided toward the harbor where fishing boats were gathering for the evening's departure. The sight reminded Indira of her responsibility to those boats, to the families who depended on equipment that would not fail when tested by wind and wave. And like you, Maya continued, Kamala began to sacrifice quality for quantity, trying to serve everyone and ending up serving no one well. Her nets began to fail, her reputation suffered, and customers began seeking other weavers. What did she do? At first, she tried to work even faster, to somehow maintain quality while meeting impossible demands. But the more she hurried, the worse her work became. Finally, she made a difficult decision. Maya paused to examine a knot in one of Indira's nets, testing its tension with the automatic expertise of decades spent working with rope and twine. She announced that she would accept only 6 commissions at a time, and that each net would receive her complete attention until finished. No exceptions, no rush orders, no special arrangements for wealthy customers. Indira felt a flutter of anxiety at the thought of such restrictions. Didn't she lose most of her business? Initially, yes. Many fishermen went to other weavers who promised faster delivery, cheaper prices, easier accommodations to their schedules. Maya's voice held no judgment, only the patient tone of someone explaining natural consequences. But within a year, something interesting happened. The fishermen who used Kamala's new approach, one net at a time, complete attention to each project, found that these nets lasted 3 times longer than her previous work, and 5 times longer than nets made by other weavers. The teaching began to penetrate Indira's understanding. Quality that received full attention became quality that served more completely, even if fewer pieces were produced. Word spread that Kamala's nets, though expensive and slow to obtain, were so reliable that they represented the best value available. Fishermen began to plan their orders months in advance, willing to wait for nets they could trust completely. Through the window, Indira watched the fishing boats heading out to sea, their nets carefully arranged and checked. She tried to imagine how it would feel to know that every net leaving her hands was woven with the same care she had once given to single projects, the same attention that had built her reputation in the first place. Within 2 years, Maya concluded, Kamala was earning more from 6 nets than she had ever earned from 20, because her customers knew that buying one of her nets meant they would not need to replace it for many seasons. Her work served them better, and their loyalty served her better. The story settled into Indira's awareness like a key turning in a lock. She had been thinking that reducing her output meant reducing her service to the community, but perhaps the opposite was true. Perhaps trying to serve everyone meant serving no one well enough. The fishermen need nets they can trust more than they need nets immediately, she said slowly. Yes, and they need weavers they can trust more than they need, weavers who promise what cannot be delivered with integrity. As evening approached and the fishing boats disappeared into the golden distance, Indira began to see her situation with new clarity. Her reputation had been built on the quality that came from giving each net her complete attention. Trying to maintain that reputation while abandoning the practices that had created it was not just impossible, it was dishonest. Tomorrow, she said, I will finish the net currently on my loom. Just that one net, with all the attention it deserves. Then I will contact my other customers and explain that their nets will be completed one at a time in the order they were commissioned, with each receiving the same care that originally made my work valuable. Maya smiled, the expression transforming her weathered features. And how do you think they will respond? Indira considered this honestly. Some will be disappointed by the delay. Some may cancel their orders and seek faster alternatives. But those who truly understand the value of reliable nets will wait, because they know the difference between adequate work and masterful work. Yes, and which customers serve your craft better? Those who demand speed over quality, or those who value quality enough to wait for it? The answer was obvious once stated clearly. The customers who appreciated the careful work that made nets truly reliable were the ones whose loyalty would sustain her craft over time, whose satisfaction would maintain her reputation and her sense of purpose. As they prepared simple food together in Indira's small kitchen, the conversation turned to the deeper lessons embedded in the challenge she was facing. There is a teaching from the Buddha, Maya said, as she helped arrange rice and vegetables on plain earthenware plates. He spoke of the middle way, not the extreme of luxury and ease, but also not the extreme of harsh deprivation. Applied to work, this might mean not the extreme of accepting every demand, but also not the extreme of refusing all challenges. Indira ladled curry fragrant with cumin and coriander onto their plates, thinking about how this principle might apply to her weaving practice. So, finding the middle ground between saying yes to everything and saying no to everything, finding the place where your true capacity meets genuine service, not more than you can do well, but also not less than your skills and circumstances allow. They ate in comfortable silence, listening to the sound of waves against the harbor walls and the distant calls of night birds beginning their evening songs. The familiar sounds reminded Indira of all the evenings she had spent weaving by lamplight, her fingers moving in ancient patterns while the fishing community settled into rest, trusting that tomorrow would bring nets worthy of their faith. "I have been afraid," she said as they cleared the dishes, "that if I make fewer nets, I will become less important to the community, that my work will matter less." "And what do you understand now?" Indira dried her hands slowly, considering the question with the same attention she brought to examining the tension in her weaving. "That work matters not because of how much of it there is, but because of how well it serves its purpose. A single net that holds for years serves the community better than 10 nets that fail when they're needed most." "This is wisdom," Maya agreed, "to understand that our value lies not in how much we produce, but in how faithfully we honor the purpose our production serves." That night, Indira returned to her workroom with a different feeling than had characterized her recent relationship with her craft. Instead of the anxious urgency that had driven her to work faster and longer, she felt the return of something she had almost forgotten: genuine eagerness to engage with the specific requirements of a single piece of work. The net currently on her loom was commissioned by Deepak, a middle-aged fisherman who specialized in catching the medium-sized fish that schooled in deeper waters. She had started the net 3 weeks earlier, working on it in fragments between sessions on other projects, but now she looked at it as if seeing it clearly for the first time. This net needed to be strong enough to hold substantial weight, but fine enough not to damage the fish or allow small ones to escape. The mesh size was critical. Too large, and the catch would be reduced. Too small, and the net would create excessive drag through the water. The border reinforcements needed special attention because this type of fishing put tremendous stress on the net's edges. "Hello, old friend," she whispered to the partially completed net, running her fingers along its emerging pattern. "I'm sorry for the scattered attention I've been giving you. Tonight, you have all of me." She lit her oil lamp carefully, adjusted her working stool to the proper height, and began to weave with the focused presence that had once characterized all her work. Each knot received individual attention. Each spacing was measured precisely. Each section was completed with the understanding that it would need to function perfectly under conditions she could only imagine. As she worked, Indira felt something returning that had been absent from her recent weaving: joy. Not the frantic satisfaction of completing tasks efficiently, but the deep pleasure of engaging fully with work that mattered, of bringing all her skill to bear on a single worthy challenge. The rhythmic motion of her fingers, the gradual emergence of strong, even patterns, the growing weight of the net as it took on substance and form, all of it reminded her why she had fallen in love with this craft in the first place. Each net was a puzzle to solve, a relationship to honor, a small masterpiece of function and form created through the marriage of ancient knowledge and present attention. "I had forgotten," she murmured to Maya, who sat quietly in the corner mending a small net of her own. "How satisfying it is to work this way, to give everything to one thing at a time." "The satisfaction comes from integrity," Maya replied without looking up from her own work. "When we match our promises to our capacity, when we give our complete presence to whatever we undertake, the work becomes a form of meditation, a way of serving something larger than our own ambitions." They worked together in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them. Through the window, they could see lights from fishing boats far out at sea, tiny beacons marking the places where men trusted their lives to nets like the one taking shape under Indira's hands. The knowledge of that trust no longer felt like pressure, but like privilege. Every knot she tied tonight would hold or fail under conditions that mattered deeply to real people, living real lives. That Deepak had chosen her to create this tool, had trusted her skill and integrity enough to risk his livelihood on her work. This was not a burden, but a gift, a chance to serve something meaningful through the expression of her own capabilities. As dawn approached, the net was nearly complete. Only the final inspections remained, the careful checking of every knot and junction that had once been routine but had been hurried or skipped during her period of trying to do too much too quickly. "Will you show me your inspection process?" Maya asked as Indira began the systematic examination that would determine whether the net was ready for use. "Of course." Indira spread the completed sections carefully, beginning at one corner and working methodically through every part of the weave. Each knot must be tested for proper tension, tight enough to hold under stress, but not so tight that the fibers are damaged. The spacing must be absolutely uniform, or weak spots will develop where the pattern varies. Her fingers moved with practiced expertise, finding and correcting tiny imperfections that would be invisible to untrained eyes, but could mean the difference between success and failure when the net faced its first real test. "The border reinforcement receives special attention," she continued, examining the thick cord that would bear the greatest strain when the net was hauled up full of fish. "These knots must be perfect. There is no margin for error in the places that receive the most stress." Maya watched the careful process with obvious appreciation. "How long does this inspection take?" "For a net this size, about an hour. Sometimes longer if I find problems that need correction." Indira paused in her work, suddenly conscious of how this timeline fit with her recent attempts to produce nets more quickly. "I had been skipping this step or rushing through it to save time. That's how the failures happened." "And what have you learned about saving time by skipping essential steps?" The question hardly needed an answer. The time saved by inadequate inspection had been overwhelmed by the time needed to replace failed nets, compensate disappointed customers, and rebuild damaged trust. The shortcut had been the longest possible path to her intended destination. "I learned that there are no shortcuts to integrity," Indira said simply, "that trying to save time by doing things poorly costs more time than doing them right in the first place." By the time the sun rose over the harbor, painting the water gold and calling fishing boats back toward shore, Deepak's net was complete. It lay spread across Indira's workroom floor like a geometric prayer, every knot true, every measurement precise, every section crafted with the care that made the difference between adequate and excellent. "It's beautiful," Maya said, and Indira could hear genuine admiration in the older weaver's voice. "This is the work of someone who remembers why nets matter." Indira looked down at the completed net with a satisfaction she had not felt in months. It was not just finished, but finished well, Every part of it reflected the skills passed down through generations of women in her family, the attention to purpose that made craft into art, the integrity that transformed work into service. "I remember now," she said quietly, "what my mother used to tell me about weaving. She said that each net carries the weaver's intention into the world. If we weave with care and honesty, the net serves well. If we weave with haste or ego, the net carries those qualities too. Your mother was wise. And what intention did you weave into this net?" Indira considered the question as she began carefully folding the completed net, preparing it for delivery to Deepak. What had she been thinking about during the long night of focused work? What quality of mind had guided her fingers through the ancient patterns? "Service," she said finally. "The intention to serve Deepak's needs as perfectly as I know how, to honor the trust he placed in my skill, to create something worthy of the tradition I inherited from my mother and her mothers before her." This story shows us how trying to serve everyone often means serving no one well. Indira discovered that her attempt to meet unlimited demand had degraded her work to the point where it no longer served its essential purpose. Buddhism teaches about the middle way, not the extreme of refusing all responsibility, but also not the extreme of accepting impossible obligations. When we align our commitments with our true capacity, we can give our complete presence to each task, honoring both the work and those who depend on it. Let us pause here to notice our own relationship with capacity and commitment. Feel your breath naturally supporting your life without effort or striving. Notice how your body knows its own rhythms, its own needs for rest and activity. There is wisdom in this natural balance that needs no improvement, only recognition and respect. In a village where ancient banyan trees created natural temples of shade and birdsong, there lived a man named Arjun who taught children to read and write. His school was nothing more than a patch of swept earth beneath the largest tree, furnished with stones for seats and a piece of slate, where he would write the day's lessons in precise, beautiful script. Arjun had learned letters late in his own life, not as a child, but as a young man working in the fields of a wealthy landowner who had recognized his quick mind and generous heart. The landowner had paid for Arjun to study with a scholar in the district town, and there Arjun had discovered the magic of written words, how sounds could be captured in marks on palm leaves, how stories and wisdom could be preserved beyond the memory of any single person. When he returned to his village, literate and eager to share what he had learned, Arjun found children hungry for knowledge, but no formal school to feed that hunger. Parents who worked from dawn to dusk had no time to teach their children letters and no money to send them to distant schools. The children spent their days helping with household tasks or playing in the dust, their bright minds unchallenged, their potential unrealized. So Arjun had begun simply gathering a few children under the banyan tree and showing them how to make marks in the dirt that represented the sounds of their names. Word spread quickly. Here was a man who would teach reading and writing for free, who asked only that children come willing to learn and parents support their education with patience and encouragement. Within months, Arjun's informal school had grown from 3 children to 30, ranging in age from 5 to 15, representing families from every level of the village's social structure. The children of farmers sat beside the children of merchants. The children of laborers learned alongside the children of priests. Under the democratic shade of the banyan tree, only curiosity and effort mattered. Arjun loved the work with a passion that surprised even himself. Each child who mastered a new letter, each student who successfully read their first complete sentence, Each moment when understanding dawned in young eyes, these were victories more satisfying than any harvest, more precious than any treasure. He was creating something that had never existed in his village before. A generation that could read and write, that could access the wisdom of books and preserve their own stories for the future. But as the school grew, so did the challenges of managing 30 children of different ages and abilities. Some students grasped new concepts immediately, while others needed patient repetition. Some came eager to learn, while others attended reluctantly at their parents' insistence. Some were respectful and attentive, while others were disruptive and difficult to redirect. Arjun found himself constantly dividing his attention, trying to help a struggling 5-year-old form letters while managing a restless 10-year-old who had finished his work early while answering questions from advanced students who were ready for more challenging material. Each child deserved individual attention, specific guidance suited to their level and learning style. But 30 children seeking help simultaneously made such personalized instruction nearly impossible. The quality of his teaching began to suffer under the strain of divided attention. Lessons that had once been carefully planned and thoughtfully presented became hurried overviews aimed at the middle range of abilities, leaving the slowest students confused and the fastest students bored. Individual corrections that had once helped children improve their writing were replaced by general comments that addressed no one's specific needs. Most troubling of all, Arjun noticed that his patience, once seemingly limitless when working with small groups of eager students, was wearing thin under the constant pressure of managing a crowd. He found himself speaking sharply to children who made innocent mistakes, showing frustration with questions that interrupted his attempts to maintain order, feeling resentful toward parents who sent disruptive children without preparing them for the discipline that learning required. The joy that had once characterized his teaching was being replaced by exhaustion and stress. Instead of waking eagerly each morning to share the gift of literacy, Arjun began to dread the chaos that awaited him under the banyan tree. Teaching had become crowd control, learning had become confusion, and the noble work of education was deteriorating into something that served no one well. One morning, as he struggled to manage a particularly difficult session where crying, shouting, and inattention had made meaningful instruction impossible, Arjun made a decision that surprised even himself. He dismissed all the children early, asking them to tell their parents that school would be suspended for 3 days while he considered how to better serve their educational needs. Alone under the banyan tree, for the first time in months, surrounded by the scattered slates and palm leaf texts that were the tools of his trade, Arjun felt something approaching despair. How had his beautiful vision of bringing literacy to village children become this overwhelming chaos? How had his gift for teaching been buried under the impossible demands of trying to educate too many children simultaneously? As he sat contemplating his dilemma, an elderly woman approached through the dappled shade of the great tree. She was someone Arjun recognized but did not know well. Savitri, a widow who lived alone at the edge of the village, known for her wisdom and her extensive knowledge of traditional stories and songs. "The children are home early today," she observed, settling herself on one of the stones that served as classroom seating. "Has something happened to the school?" Arjun looked up from his troubled contemplation, seeing genuine concern in the old woman's eyes. "The school has grown too large for me to manage effectively," he admitted. "I fear I am failing the very children I sought to help." Savitri picked up one of the practice slates, examining the childish letters scratched into its surface with obvious interest. "These marks are well formed for young hands. Someone has taught this child with patience and skill. Some of them learn beautifully when they receive proper attention," Arjun replied. But with 30 children of different ages and abilities, proper attention becomes impossible. I feel like a man trying to water 30 plants with a single cup. By the time I return to the first plant, it has already begun to wither from neglect. An apt comparison, Savitri agreed. Tell me, when you first began teaching, how many students did you have? 3, then 5, then 8. Each edition felt manageable because I could still give each child individual attention, could adapt my methods to their specific needs and learning pace. And at what point did the teaching become difficult rather than joyful? Arjun had to think back through the gradual accumulation of students, trying to identify when enthusiasm had begun to turn into overwhelm. Perhaps around 20 children. Before that, I could still know each child well, could track their progress individually, could maintain the kind of relationship that makes teaching effective. So somewhere between 8 students and 20 students, you crossed a threshold from sustainable teaching to unsustainable effort. The observation was uncomfortably accurate. There had indeed been a point where adding more students stopped enhancing the educational experience and began degrading it, but the change had been so gradual that Arjun had not recognized it at the time, had continued accepting new students because each individual addition seemed reasonable. But how can I turn away children who want to learn? He asked, voicing the moral dilemma that had prevented him from limiting enrollment earlier. How can I deny education to some in order to better serve others? Savitri was quiet for a long moment, watching a group of sparrows scratch for seeds in the dust where children usually sat. Let me tell you about a well digger named Bharat, she said finally. Arjun recognized the beginning of a teaching story and settled back against the banyan's massive trunk, grateful for any wisdom that might illuminate his situation. Bharat was skilled at finding water in the driest ground, at digging wells that would serve communities for generations. Word of his expertise spread throughout the region, and villages began requesting his services faster than he could fulfill them. A peacock called from somewhere in the village, its voice wild and haunting in the afternoon heat. Children's voices could be heard from distant houses, a reminder of the 30 students who were home unexpectedly because their teacher had reached the limits of his capacity. Bharat felt obligated to help every village that asked for his services. He began digging many wells simultaneously, moving from site to site, trying to advance all projects at once rather than completing them one by one. The parallel to Arjun's situation was immediately apparent. Instead of one well dug deeply and properly, many wells started, but none finished adequately. What happened? Arjun asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. The wells were poorly dug because Bharat's attention was scattered among too many projects. Some were too shallow and went dry in summer. Others were not properly lined and collapsed during monsoons. Most produced muddy water because he had not taken time to dig through the clay layer to reach the pure water beneath. Arjun winced, recognizing his own situation in the story. His scattered attention was producing shallow learning that would not serve his students when they needed to use their literacy skills in real situations. The villages that had waited for Bharat's expertise found themselves with inadequate wells that failed when most needed. His reputation suffered, and eventually no one sought his services because they had learned that his promises could not be trusted. A cautionary tale, Arjun murmured. But what should he have done differently? There was a wise old well digger who had faced the same challenge years before. When Bharat sought his advice, the old man told him something surprising. The way to serve the most villages is to serve fewer villages completely. Savitri paused to examine another practice slate, this one showing more advanced writing, complete words rather than individual letters. evidence of a student who had progressed far under Arjun's instruction when that instruction had been focused and individual. The old well digger explained that a properly dug well serves a village for generations, providing clean water year after year through all seasons and weather conditions. A poorly dug well serves no one. It fails when most needed, wastes the community's investment, and leaves them worse off than before. The teaching penetrated Arjun's understanding with uncomfortable clarity. His current approach was like digging 30 shallow wells, impressive in quantity but unreliable in function. So Bharat changed his methods. He accepted commissions for only 3 wells at a time, completing each one fully before beginning the next. His output decreased dramatically. Instead of starting 20 wells each year, he completed only 9. A group of older boys walked past on their way to help with evening chores, calling respectful greetings to Arjun as they passed. These were children who had been among his first students, who had received the benefit of his focused attention when the school was still small and manageable. But those 9 wells served their villages perfectly. They produced clean water in abundance, never failed during droughts, remained clear and sweet through the heaviest rains. The villages that received Bharat's complete attention became prosperous and grateful customers who recommended his services throughout the region. While the villages with inadequate wells suffered, Arjun added, seeing the full implications of the comparison. Within 3 years, Bharat had more requests than ever before, but now from villages that had heard about his reliable work rather than his impressive promises. He could choose the most suitable projects, work with communities that appreciated quality, and build a sustainable practice based on excellence rather than quantity. As the afternoon light began to slant through the banyan's leaves, casting shifting patterns of sun and shadow across the makeshift classroom, Arjun felt something settling in his mind like dust after a windstorm. You're suggesting that I should limit enrollment in the school. I'm suggesting that you consider what actually serves the children best. Many students receiving scattered, inadequate attention, or fewer students receiving the kind of focused, individual instruction that creates genuine literacy. The choice, when stated so clearly, seemed obvious, yet accepting it meant disappointing families, turning away eager children, reducing the scope of his impact in ways that felt like failure rather than wisdom. But the children I don't accept, what happens to them? Savitri smiled, her weathered face creasing with something that looked like approval for his concern. A good question, and one that reveals your heart for this work. Tell me, what would happen if you created a school so excellent, with students so well prepared, that other villages requested their own schools taught by your former students? The idea had never occurred to Arjun, but it sparked immediate excitement. Students who received truly excellent instruction could become teachers themselves, carrying literacy to new communities, multiplying the impact of quality education far beyond what any single overwhelmed teacher could achieve. I could teach teachers, he said slowly, instead of trying to teach everyone directly. Yes, and which serves the cause of literacy better? One teacher burning out while trying to educate 30 children poorly, or one teacher preparing 10 excellent students who can each establish schools of their own? The mathematics of impact suddenly looked very different. If he could prepare even 5 students so thoroughly that they became competent teachers, those 5 could educate 50 more children better than his current scattered approach was educating 30. The path to serving more children might be to serve fewer children better, he realized aloud. This is wisdom, Savitri agreed. To understand that sustainable service often requires apparent limitation, that true generosity sometimes looks like selectivity, that the way to help everyone may be to help someone completely. As evening approached and cooking fires began to send thin streams of smoke into the still air, Arjun felt a plan beginning to form in his mind. Not the desperate improvisation that had characterized his recent attempts to manage an impossible situation, but a thoughtful strategy based on what actually served the goal of spreading literacy. "Tomorrow," he said, "I will invite the parents to a meeting under this tree. I will explain what I have learned about the relationship between class size and educational quality, and I will ask for their help in selecting 15 students who can benefit most from intensive instruction." 15 students from 30 applicants, Savitri observed. "How will you choose?" The question forced Arjun to think carefully about what criteria would best serve both the selected students and the larger goal of creating future teachers. Students who have already shown aptitude and enthusiasm, but also students who come from families willing to support their education fully. Children who can not only learn, but who might someday teach others. And the 15 who are not selected? They will be invited to join a waiting list for the following year, when some of the current students will graduate to become teaching assistants or establish their own schools. No one is permanently excluded, but everyone benefits from receiving education that is properly paced and individually attentive. As they gathered the scattered slates and palm leaves that were the physical evidence of the school's existence, Arjun felt something he had not experienced in months: genuine excitement about the next day's teaching. Not the anxious dread of trying to manage chaos, but eager anticipation of working with a manageable number of students who could receive the quality of instruction that created real learning. "There is one more thing," Savitri said as they prepared to leave the banyan tree to its evening inhabitants, the bats and night birds that would claim its shelter after the human day ended. "The story of Bharat has a final chapter." Arjun paused in his organizing, curious about how the tale would conclude. Years after Bharat had established his practice of digging fewer but better wells, a drought struck the region. It was the worst dry season in living memory. Rivers disappeared, shallow wells failed, and communities faced genuine scarcity. The evening air was growing cooler, and fireflies were beginning to blink among the banyan's hanging roots like tiny stars fallen to earth. In the distance, temple bells began calling the faithful to evening prayers. But the wells that Bharat had dug properly, the ones that reached deep into the earth's hidden water, continued flowing even through the severest drought. The villages he had served completely were the only ones with reliable water when water became most precious. The final lesson of the story settled into Arjun's awareness, like the last piece of a complex puzzle falling into place. Quality that served deeply could be trusted when conditions became challenging, while quantity that served only superficially failed exactly when it was most needed. "The children I teach well will carry their literacy through all the challenges of their lives," he said. "But children who receive scattered, inadequate instruction may find their limited skills failing them when they most need to read or write. Yes, and which better honors the gift of literacy, spreading it thinly among many who cannot depend on it, or establishing it firmly in fewer who can build upon it throughout their lives." As they walked together toward the village, leaving the banyan tree to settle into its ancient rhythm of night sounds and growing darkness, Arjun felt the return of something precious he had almost lost: love for his work. Not the overwhelmed obligation to do more than was possible, but genuine affection for the process of helping young minds discover the magic of written language. Tomorrow would bring the difficult conversations with parents whose children would not be selected for the smaller, more intensive school. There would be disappointment, questions about fairness, perhaps even anger from families who felt their children deserved immediate access to education. But there would also be the joy of working again with manageable numbers, of knowing each student as an individual, of providing the kind of patient, personalized instruction that created genuine literacy rather than mere familiarity with letters. The children who were selected would receive an education that prepared them not just to read, but to teach others to read, multiplying the impact far beyond what any single overwhelmed teacher could achieve alone. This story shows us how the desire to serve everyone can prevent us from serving anyone effectively. Arjun discovered that his large class had become too scattered for real learning to occur, that trying to teach 30 children meant teaching none of them well. Buddhism teaches that skillful means requires understanding our true capacity and working within it, that sustainable service often requires what appears to be limitation. When we align our efforts with our actual abilities, we can offer our complete presence to each task, creating results that truly serve the purpose we aim to fulfill. Let us rest here for a moment, feeling the wisdom of these teachings settle into our hearts like rain soaking into thirsty earth. Notice how your breath continues its ancient rhythm without effort or control. Feel your body supported by whatever holds you, trusting in forces larger than your individual will. These stories of consequence, of choices rippling outward like stones in still water, remind us that we are always weaving the world we will inhabit tomorrow. We have traveled far together tonight, through the workshop where Rajan discovered that his stained hands were not marks of shame, but evidence of service, through the bee yards where Kamala learned to work skillfully with fear rather than being paralyzed by it, through Sita's mountain refuge where perfectionism gave way to honest practice, past Indira's harbor where the nets that held strongest were woven one at a time with complete attention, and finally to Arjun's teaching tree where serving fewer students completely meant serving the cause of literacy more fully. All of these teachings point to the same fundamental truth, that the quality of our attention determines the quality of our service. That presence given fully to what we can actually accomplish serves the world better than effort scattered among impossible demands. The Buddha taught that right action flows naturally from right understanding, and right understanding begins with seeing clearly what is rather than what we wish could be. In your own life, you may find yourself caught between the fear of consequences and the paralysis of perfectionism, between the desire to serve everyone and the recognition that scattered effort serves no one well. These stories offer a middle path, not the extreme of reckless action or complete inaction, but the wisdom of acting skillfully within your true capacity, of giving your whole presence to whatever you genuinely undertake. The deepest truth revealed tonight is that karma, the law of cause and effect that governs all our actions, operates not just through what we do, but through how we do it. The merchant who sells honest goods with complete attention creates different consequences than one who sells many goods with divided focus. The parent who listens fully to one child's concern serves their family differently than one who tries to solve everyone's problems simultaneously while present to none. Your hands, whatever work they do, carry wisdom accumulated through countless moments of attention or distraction, care or haste, presence or absence. The consequences of your choices are already rippling outward through the world, creating the conditions you will meet tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. But this is not a burden. It is a gift. The recognition that each moment offers a fresh opportunity to plant seeds of wisdom, to act from clarity rather than confusion, to serve what matters most through the quality of presence you bring to whatever is actually in front of you. Feel your shoulders softening now, releasing any tension you may have gathered while listening. Let your jaw relax. Your hands rest peacefully wherever they lie. There is nothing you need to fix tonight. No action you must take before sleep comes to claim you. The stories you have heard will work their transformation in the deep places of understanding, like seeds planted in rich soil that grows what it needs without your conscious effort. Your breathing is slowing naturally, following its own perfect rhythm that needs no improvement, no control, no interference from your thinking mind. Each breath carries you deeper into the peace that is always available, always present beneath whatever surface troubles may disturb the clear water of awareness. Let your eyelids grow heavy now, like curtains closing softly at the end of a beautiful day. The weight of your body settles more completely into whatever supports you, trusting gravity to hold you as it has held every sleeping creature since the beginning of time. You are safe here, held by forces both seen and unseen, cradled in the vast compassion that includes all beings in its tender embrace. The consequences of today's actions will unfold in their own time, following laws older than human worry and wiser than personal control. Tomorrow will bring its own opportunities for skillful response, its own invitations to choose presence over absence, quality over quantity, service over ego. But tonight, all of that can rest. You have done enough today. You have listened with an open heart to teachings that took root in ancient wisdom and flowered in stories of ordinary people learning extraordinary truths. You have allowed yourself to receive what was offered without needing to understand everything immediately, trusting that comprehension comes in its own season, like fruit ripening on the tree. Feel yourself sinking deeper now into the soft darkness that welcomes all thoughts, all worries, all plans for tomorrow. Let them dissolve like sugar stirred into warm milk, sweetening the silence but disappearing into something larger and more nourishing than their individual substance. Your body knows how to sleep. Your breath knows how to sustain you through the night's journey without any guidance from your conscious mind. Your heart knows how to keep its steady rhythm while you rest, carrying life through every cell without pause or uncertainty. Trust this wisdom that needs no learning, this perfection that requires no improvement. The stories end, but their truth continues in the living of your days. The choices you make tomorrow and the day after tomorrow will be informed by what you have received tonight, guided by the understanding that every action creates consequences, that every moment of attention plants seeds in the field of time. But that is tomorrow's gift to discover. Tonight, there is only this settling, this releasing, this gentle letting go of everything that is not peace. Your breath grows softer with each exhale. Your thoughts grow quieter with each passing moment. Your body grows heavier with the sweet weight of approaching sleep. Let everything soften now. Let everything release. There is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to become, no one you need to please or satisfy or convince. You are already complete as you are, already whole in ways that need no external validation, already perfect in the only perfection that matters, the perfection of being exactly what you are in exactly this moment. The marketplace of consequences continues its ancient commerce beyond your sleeping form, but you have learned its deepest secret, that acting from love creates love, that serving with complete presence serves perfectly, that giving your whole attention to what you can actually accomplish plants seeds of wisdom that bloom in their own season. Rest now in this understanding. Sleep now in this peace. Dream now of the world you are creating with every choice, every breath, every moment of presence, given freely to what matters most. Sleep well, dear traveler on the path of awakening. Sleep well, student of the ancient teachings that make all things new. Sleep well, knowing that your life is already a prayer, your presence already a gift, your simple existence already a blessing to the world that holds you. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us at Sleepy Monk.